Chapter 1389. The woman was wearing a tight silver dress that left her shoulders bare. Her arms were fair and delicate, and her face was painted with exquisite makeup. One look was enough to tell that she was a veteran who frequented nightclubs. When the crowd saw this woman, they all whistled. "Who is this? Aren't you going to introduce her to us? I didn't expect an honest boy like you to find such a beautiful girl." "Not honest. Ha ha ha." They spoke one after another, causing Luo Zhan to be somewhat annoyed. Waving his hand, Luo Zhan said impatiently, "What the hell? Where did this pheasant come from? Do I even know you?" When the woman heard this, her expression changed again and again. "What do you mean? I already said that I don't know you, but you insist on pestering me like this. If you're not a wild chicken, what are you?" Luo Zhan's tone was obviously very bad. Hey, how can you treat a beauty like this? You'll be punished by heaven if you do this." Some people around had already begun to feel pity for him. They looked at Luo Zhan reproachfully and said, "Beauty, this boy is drunk. Don't lower yourself to his level." But before he finished speaking, the man looked behind her with his eyes wide open. Not only him, but even the people around him all looked behind the woman. Behind the woman, more than a dozen tall and powerful men had already walked out, all wearing tight t-shirts. They all stood behind the woman, looking at the men in front of them with unfriendly expressions. The beauty sneered, looked at Luo Zhan, and said, "If you have the guts, say what you just said again." Luo Zhan's back was facing them, so he naturally did not see their current situation. But when he saw the situation of his companions, he subconsciously turned around as well. With one glance, Luo Zhan was dumbfounded. He was simply in a bad mood, so he wanted to vent. What was going on now? Luo Zhan felt a little flustered and said, "What do you want?" The woman was very satisfied with Luo Zhan's expression. She turned to look at the tallest man in the crowd and said, "Brother, you heard that. This guy didn't pay me, and he even King called me a wild chicken. Help me teach him a lesson." Luo Zhan was a homebody, a well-deserved homebody. He was the kind of otaku with disheveled hair and a dirty face who had cancer of laziness. His muscles had already turned into fat. Seeing this, Luo Zhan's eyes widened. He looked at the group of people behind him and said, "There must be some misunderstanding. To be honest, I have schizophrenia. Just now, it was my other personality that spoke." The beauty in the lead sneered and said, "Then your personality switch is quite free. Big brother, beat him up." The beautiful woman waved her hand, and the muscular men behind her stepped forward. One by one, they flexed their muscles and quickly surrounded her. Luo Zhan sat where he was and suddenly sneered. He looked at them with a very calm expression and said, "Are you sure you want to do this? I'm warning you, you'll regret it. My big brother is around here. If he finds out that you bullied me, you'll die a horrible death." Hearing this, those people all laughed. The leader raised his leg and stepped on the table in front of Luo Zhan. He said, "Is that so? What's your brother's name?" Chapter 1390. Everyone was listening attentively. Seeing Luo Zhan's serious look, they thought he really had something up his sleeve. But when they heard the roar, everyone immediately understood. They had been tricked. The muscular man was suddenly pushed down and fell to the ground in an instant, appearing to be in a somewhat sorry state. At the same time, those who had been sitting down suddenly got up and dispersed. The muscular man who had been pushed down was furious and roared, "Stop!" His strong arm grabbed at Luo Zhan's leg. Luo Zhan lost his balance and fell forward. But the pain he had imagined didn't come. Instead, he fell into a soft and pungent embrace. Luo Zhan's lips kissed the breasts of the beautiful woman. The soft and fragrant touch would have made any man's heart flutter. But Luo Zhan wasn't an ordinary man. Such a touch that would make ordinary people feel good and happy was no different from a wild beast to Luo Zhan. Eyes wide, Luo Zhan subconsciously used his hands to prop himself up. But who knew that the beautiful woman would hug him and twist her body? She said, "Why didn't you do this earlier? What are you pretending for? We had a good time last time, didn't we?" As she spoke, the beautiful woman's mouth moved closer and asked, "You don't have a girlfriend yet, do you?" Luo Zhan's eyes widened. He suddenly felt goosebumps all over his body. This woman was obviously a slut. Not only had she slept with Luo Ran, but now she wanted to sleep with Luo Ran's younger twin brother. Pfft! How could the two good children of the Luo family be tainted by such a slut? Luo Zhan turned his head in resistance and pushed the beautiful woman away. But this action made the beautiful woman, who had just calmed down, angry again. She shouted, "Beat him up." The surrounding people rushed forward and surrounded Luo Zhan. The people just now had already run far away. Fortunately, they didn't chase after them. The target of that group was Luo Zhan. "Hey, we just left Luo Zhan behind like this. Isn't that bad?" "No, that woman is obviously interested in Luo Zhan. Maybe she wants to develop a relationship with him. But Luo Zhan doesn't seem to like that woman. Will he really develop a relationship with her?" Besides, Luo Zhan's words were so harsh just now. "It's really easy to get beaten up. Shall we go back and have a look?" The sounds of discussion could be heard. Louis Han panted and stopped. He looked at his friends and said, "I'll go back and check. If I don't come back in 5 minutes, call the police and come back together. Do you understand?" "It's okay, I guess. Luo Zhan is very clever." "I think so too, and that woman probably can't bear to do anything to Luo Zhan. At most, she will drag him to get a room, ha ha ha." When Louis Han heard that, he suddenly felt a little guilty. Would Luo Zhan accept a woman? No, probably not. This guy wasn't the kind of person who was half-hearted, and it was even more impossible for him to be bisexual. Moreover, this fellow's mouth was so despicable. He might really get beaten up, Louis Han thought, quickened his pace, and ran back to the bar. The bar was getting closer and closer. Louis Han ran in and saw the crowd. Dash. Chapter 1391. There was a lot of discussion in the crowd. Louis Han was shocked and rushed in at the first time. When he saw Luo Zhan, his face was already bruised and held by 2 people. Many people were looking at this side, but no one came forward. Damn! Louis Han only felt a rush of blood to the top of his head. Luo Zhan. Luo Zhan looked up a little awkwardly. His lips were bruised and swollen. Seeing Louis Han's livid face, he actually felt a little happy. Resisting the pain on his face, Luo Zhan twitched the corner of his mouth and said with a slightly teasing look, "What are you doing? Haven't you seen someone get beaten before?" This look, it was like when they were still living together. Every time he cooked, he would sullenly vow, "Today, I must let you taste what is called the Manchu Han Imperial Feast." But every time, it ended in failure. Every time, he would look unrepentant and loudly say, "What are you doing? Haven't you seen a chef fail before?" Memories came to him all at once. After all, they were friends for many years. Louis Han's heart seemed to be blocked. His masseter muscles tightened, and he rushed forward to pull the man who was holding Luo Zhan. There was a commotion around. All of them were people who were not afraid of getting into trouble. Some people even whistled to add to the fun. No one had the slightest intention to intervene. Louis Han's skills were not bad, but he was just an IT man. In terms of physical strength and skills, how could he compare with those people who had been in the underworld for a long time? For a time, it was a hard fight. But Louis Han only hit a few times, and the situation was one-sided. Idiot. Luo Zhan really wanted to take him to see what a pig's brain looked like. In this case, couldn't it be over directly to the police? How could these thin arms and legs be the opponents of this group of muscular men? Just when Luo Zhan thought that he was going to be crippled here today, the crowd suddenly quieted down. Don't move. Police. Although at the beginning, the person who fell in the bar was Luo Zhan, but later, compared to Louis Han, Luo Zhan's injury seemed to be much lighter. The two were sent to the hospital by their colleagues. After a simple application of medicine, the colleagues went home, while Luohan and Luo Zhan squatted at the door of the hospital and did not move. No one said they would leave first. The moon tonight seemed to be exceptionally round and bright. Luo Zhan looked at the sky. It was dark, and a few scattered stars were far away from the moon. They were so faint that they were hard to see. The weather of early summer was neither hot nor cold. The two of them sat on the steps and listened to the chirping of the insects around them. They did not move for a long time. "I'm sorry, I've implicated you." Luo Zhan didn't look back and said in a flippant tone, "That woman is my brother's mistress. She mistook me for my brother. Damn, I was almost dragged to the hotel. Fortunately, I was quick-witted. Otherwise, my wife would not be able to enjoy my virginity in the future." Alas, tonight was so thrilling. Luo Zhan had a look of lingering fear. He exhaled and said, "But why did you come back in one piece? They would let me go after beating me up a few times. After all, with my looks, they wouldn't bear to beat me up too much. You're different. You're ugly from head to toe. Who else would they beat if not you?" Luohan turned to look at Luo Zhan and suddenly laughed. "Why are you so shameless?" His tone was relaxed, just like before. Luo Zhan was stunned and turned to look at Luohan. Seeing his eyes that were as bright as the night stars, Luo Zhan's lips twitched, but it hurt so much that he sucked in a breath. "Damn, I'm going back. I don't want to accompany you to feed the mosquitoes." Chapter 1392. When Luo Zhan heard that, he suddenly laughed. He turned around and walked toward the parking lot of the bar. Raising his head, he glanced at the hazy moon above his head. It seemed that the weather was pretty good. 2 days passed, and Li Jinnan didn't appear in the office. Yi Yuyu went to work and got off work every day, but she didn't hear any mention of Li Jinnan from her colleagues. It wasn't just Li Jinnan. Even Shen Luo and didn't appear again. The past 2 days had been unbelievably quiet. It was as if the previous episode had been nothing more than a minor accident. Yi Yuyu got off work as usual. A colleague that she was close with, Xiao Su, came up to her and asked, "Yuyu, do you want to go shopping with us?" Xiao Su was a very pretty girl. She was very popular in the office. Yi Yuyu had a good impression of her. When she heard that, she remembered that it had been a long time since she'd gone shopping. She nodded her head and replied, "Sure." Xiao Su's eyes immediately turned into crescents. She happily said, "Let's go eat then. I haven't bought clothes in a long time. Come on, let's eat our fill before we go shopping." She affectionately went up to Yi Yuyu's arm and said, "You're a celebrity. You'll definitely have better taste than I do." Yi Yuyu worked at the office with the mindset of learning. Everyone in the office was aware of Yi Yuyu's identity as an artist. They all treated her with adoration and affection. It was perfectly normal for Xiao Su to say that. But, when those words fell into the ears of some people, they undoubtedly sounded like flattery. "Hey, Xiao Su, even if you want to suck up to someone better, you should find someone better to suck up to. People who don't know better would think that you're so shabby now," a woman who looked a little older said. Her eyes were filled with disdain and hostility. Yi Yuyu knew this woman. She and Xiao Su were from the same department. The two of them were competitors for the same position, and their results were often about the same. The difference wasn't huge. All along, Xiao Su had a good relationship with the department. It was only with this woman that she was at loggerheads with. Xiao Su obviously didn't like this woman either. She snorted coldly, "It's none of your business who I want to be friends with. You're just a dog trying to catch a mouse." When she was about to turn around and leave, she heard the man say, "We are all colleagues. I just don't want you to lose too badly." At first, everyone thought that there was something between her and the CEO. After all, that kind of popular role was something that all the popular stars wanted, but no one could get it. But it was given to such a half-new and half-lukewarm artist. "I just didn't expect that." The man held the briefcase and sneered as he passed by Xiao Su. Xiao Su was a little angry and said, "Why are you so dark in your heart? You got in through a proper audition. Her acting skills are much better than that thigh you hugged. It's just that her luck wasn't that good. Who would have thought that they would encounter such an accident during filming?" Little Sue's heart ached a little. Yu didn't give up on herself. She even came to the company to study. She's much better than you. The man's face was full of disdain. Idiot. With that, he walked away with his head held high. Halfway down the stairs, a rather inconspicuous Land Rover stopped in front of them. The car window was rolled down, revealing the slightly scarred and resolute face inside. He turned to look at Yu and said, "Get in." Chapter 1393. Xiao Su and the girl who had just spoken were shocked. They looked at her in disbelief. Li Jinnan sat in the car calmly. The scab on his face had already formed a scab. It was eye-catching on his clean and handsome face. Yu was shocked to see Li Jinnan like that. When she heard that word, she looked at the two colleagues beside her. At that moment, it wasn't just the two of them. Even the passers-by were looking at Yu strangely. Yu felt a chill down her spine. She braced herself and asked, "GM Li, is something the matter?" When Li Jinnan heard that, he only glanced at her and repeated, "Get in the car." With her colleagues watching, Yu was a little reluctant. If I get in the car at that moment, what will my colleagues think? Will they think that I'm Li Jinnan's mistress? Just as Yu was deep in thought, Xiao Su nudged her and said, "Yu, GM Li is calling for you. Hurry up and get in the car. Shen is nearby." Li Jinnan didn't say his name. The look he gave her was unreadable. "I could only get the police to keep him in custody for 48 hours. He was released last night." Yu was stunned. Her heart skipped a beat. She instinctively looked to her left and right. Yu naturally knew who Shen Liangchuan was referring to. No wonder she hadn't seen Shen Luo, and for the past 2 days. He had been detained by the police. She knew that Shen Luo and wouldn't let it go so easily. "Get in the car. This is the last time." Li Jinnan's voice was low. As he spoke, he started the car. Yu's heart skipped a beat. She turned to look at Xiao Su apologetically and said, "I'm sorry. Let's do it another day." With that, Yu opened the front passenger door and got in. Without waiting for Yu to fasten her seatbelt, Li Jinnan stepped on the accelerator and drove forward. The car was big, but the air pressure was a little low. Li Jinnan drove a little fast. Yu fastened her seatbelt, but her heart couldn't stop racing. "Miss Yi, do you love your husband?" Li Jinnan asked without turning his head as he placed both hands on the steering wheel. Yu never expected that the first thing she would hear from Li Jinnan after getting into the car would be that. When he buckled his seatbelt, the sound of the buckling was especially loud. She looked up at Li Jinnan. His side profile, which was usually almost perfect, now had a few scratches and scabs. He still looked a little out of place. Sensing Yuyu's shocked gaze, Li Jinnan turned his head to look at her. He quickly averted his gaze and looked straight ahead. Yu was still in a state of shock. It took her a long time to regain her composure. She mumbled, "GM Li, why do you ask? Your husband is sick." Li Jinnan was concise and to the point. "I can tell that he's a little out of his mind. I see that you're often in Kingstown. Even when you were hospitalized, he didn't come by more than a few times. I heard from your sister that you don't have a good relationship with your husband. Is it a marriage of convenience? Marriage for show, in other words, marriage for show. It usually occurs in homosexuals and people with high status who have hidden diseases. This kind of person needed a partner to maintain their image in society, but there would be no love or sexual relationship with the partner they married. The other half of such a person was very pitiful." Chapter 1394. Wasn't their marriage just a marriage of convenience? Apart from the marriage certificate, there was no other relationship between her and Shenluo, and that was similar to that between husband and wife. Nothing at all. The love of the past also slowly dissipated along with the coldness he had been showing all this time. Yi Yuyu's eyes were filled with sorrow. The smile on her face was filled with indescribable bitterness. Li Jinnan took in her expression clearly. Very quickly, he turned his head back and slowly said, "Get a divorce. Marry me." If Yi Yuyu had only been shocked a moment ago, then she was now terrified. She looked at Li Jinnan in disbelief. It was as if she was looking at a lunatic. Li Jinnan drove steadily. His voice was magnetic, but his tone was cold. When he said those words, his face didn't show much emotion. In fact, he was expressionless. This must be a joke, right? Yi Yuyu was a little frightened. She laughed dryly and said, "GM Li, please don't make such jokes." Li Jinnan turned the steering wheel, and the car turned into a small road. The car slowed down. The car quickly came to a stop. Li Jinnan turned his head to look at her and asked, "Do I look like I'm joking?" Indeed, he didn't. Furthermore, would Li Jinnan joke? He didn't look like someone who would joke. He was from a military background. He was a man of his word, wasn't he? But why would Li Jinnan have such thoughts? Yi Yuyu felt a little frightened. She looked at Li Jinnan without saying a word. Li Jinnan looked at her. He took out a pack of cigarettes and slowly lit one. Yi Yuyu stared at the orange-red flame that burned the tip of the cigarette into ashes. The flame flickered, mirroring her current mood. "I've never had a girlfriend, and I've never touched another woman. That night was your first time, and it was my first time as well. No matter how you look at it, you're not at a disadvantage." Li Jinnan flicked the ash off his cigarette and said, "Since your relationship with your husband isn't harmonious, it's best to get a divorce early. A marriage of convenience." The only thing that mattered between them was profit. Li Jinnan didn't think he was bad. At the very least, he was much better than Shenluo and. Compared to a husband of convenience who was prone to domestic violence, an outstanding man like Li Jinnan should be much more attractive. A normal woman, no matter how stupid she was, would know what to choose. Li Jinnan was very confident. He didn't think that Yi Yuyu would reject him. When Yi Yuyu heard those words, she felt a little uncomfortable. Because it was her first time, and because she had never had sex with Shenluo, and before, he felt that she was acceptable, so he felt that he could marry her. Was that what he meant? And would it be Li Jinnan's first time? Li Jinnan was only 1 year younger than Shenluo, and he was already 29 years old. Such a man still had his first time, and it was with her? Yi Yuyu found it hard to believe. "GM Li, I'm married. With your status and background, you can go find young and beautiful girls who haven't been married before." She couldn't understand what he was thinking. She continued, "If you feel that you need to be responsible for me because it's my first time, GM Li, I can tell you very clearly that there's no need." Chapter 1395. Equality. Yi Yuyu stared at the side of his face in a daze. The wind from the window was rather strong. Li Jinnan's eyes were squinted by the wind. He turned his head to look at Yi Yuyu. His red lips parted slightly as he continued, "Now that things have already happened, I think Miss Yi is very suitable." Very suitable? Does that mean they are very compatible in bed? She laughed and said, "GM Li, I've been married before. That's already unfair to you. Furthermore, I don't think we're suitable for each other. Your status is too high, and your net worth is too high. I can't match up to you. Besides, it's not up to me to decide whether or not we get a divorce." Wasn't it up to her to decide whether to divorce or not? Li Jinnan raised his eyebrows slightly, but in his heart, he felt that it was only natural. After all, wouldn't a marriage of convenience be formed only after reaching an agreement of benefits? He looked at her and asked, "Are you saying that as long as Shen Luo and agrees to the divorce, you'll be with me?" When Yi Yu heard that, she looked at him as if he was a lunatic. He had originally thought that this fellow was quite normal and decent. Why was his way of thinking so deviant? He was as difficult to communicate with as Shen Luo, and she didn't want to pay any more attention to the man. She reached out to open the car door and said, "Thank you for bringing me here. I can go back on my own." As she spoke, she had no intention of stopping. Yi Yu quickly got out of the car, slammed the door shut, and turned to leave. Li Jinnan turned his head to look. The wind outside was very strong. Yi Yu's dress clung tightly to her body, making her look especially thin and frail. Just now, she had tacitly agreed, right? Li Jinnan put out the cigarette and looked at himself in the rearview mirror. He raised his eyebrows slightly. Yi Yu was a good woman. Since Shen Luo and couldn't give her happiness, he would. Yi Yu hailed a taxi. When she got in, Li Jinnan's rebellious words kept replaying in her mind. There were millions of good girls in the world, but he actually persuaded a married man to divorce and be with him? The more Yi Yu thought about it, the more she felt that he was toying with her. How could a normal 29-year-old man not have had a girlfriend? Furthermore, how could a normal 29-year-old man not have had a girlfriend? Secondly, Li Jinnan was so good that all the women in Kingstown would flock to him with a single word from him. Why did he have to hang himself on a tree like her? Moreover, in Shen Luo's words, she had been married before and divorced before remarrying. In the eyes of others, Li Jinnan was like picking up used shoes. How could the Li's family allow their descendants to pick up used shoes? Yi Yu had figured it all out. She felt even more stifled. She cursed in a low voice, "You're crazy." The taxi driver glanced at the rearview mirror with a strange expression. Yi Yu ignored him and drove straight to their destination. Yi Yu opened the car door and made her way back home. Just as she reached the entrance of the estate, she saw a familiar figure walking in the garden in front of the estate. The man raised his head. It was obvious that he had seen Yi Yu. His hands were in his pockets. His eyes were sinister as he looked at Yi Yu with a faint smile. When Yi Yu saw the man, her heart skipped a beat. She stopped in her tracks. Chapter 1396. Shen Luo's voice was very slow. His eyes were fixed on Yi Yu. His footsteps were neither fast nor slow, but every step he took seemed to trample on Yi Yu's heart. Yi Yu looked at Shen Luo and her heart beat faster and faster. The man in front of her had dark circles under his eyes, but it was obvious that he had freshened up and changed his clothes. He didn't look like he had been imprisoned. However, he still looked tired. His complexion didn't look good. It was obvious that he hadn't had a good time the past 2 days. Shen Luo saw Yi Yu's expression and smiled. "Come back to the capital with me, Yu. You haven't seen Yi in a long time, have you?" Guan Kui, that name had existed between Yi Yu and Shen Luo for 7 years. For 7 years, that name had been a barrier between them. Even though she knew that there was such a person between them, Yi Yu still married him without hesitation after he proposed. She had thought that as time went on, dripping water would wear away a rock. Who knew? Yi Yu suddenly felt ridiculous. She wanted to laugh, but her heart ached. Shen Luo walked closer and said, "Let's go back to see her. I think she must miss you very much." Shen Luo's expression was very normal. He looked at her and slowly said, "Also, Mom and Dad have been talking about you lately. You don't want to go back during the holidays. You're the daughter-in-law of the Shen family, after all. Even if your heart isn't here, you should still show the proper etiquette. If it was Yi, he wouldn't have been so rude. Is that so?" Yi Yu looked up at Shen Luo without backing away. "I heard that Guan Kui's condition has improved a lot recently. Didn't you go to see her? My mom asked me for something of yours last time. Didn't they contact you?" Shen Luo really didn't know about that. He frowned and asked, "Yes better? What does she want from me?" Yi Yuyu carefully looked at Shenluo An's expression and smiled. "She wants your essence of the night." Shenluo An was stunned. He looked at Yi Yuyu, and his face darkened. Nonsense. How could Yi want something like that? Guan Kui's personality was very pure. Because of her family, she might have been a little arrogant, but she was also very kind. If one were to describe Yi Yuyu as a beautiful lily whose fragrance wafted from miles away, then Guan Kui would be the sweet and lovely daughter of a humble family. She was a jasmine that people couldn't help but love. She exuded an elegant and enchanting temperament from head to toe. She was so clean that she was above the common people. However, such a girl had been ruined by a wild lily in the past. Shenluo An looked at Yi Yuyu's face and became more and more impatient with her. He sneered and said, "She's already been forced into this state by you. At this point, you still want to defame her? Yi Yuyu, you're getting more and more despicable." Every word that came out of Shenluo An's mouth was like a venomous dart. Not a single one missed, and every one of his moves was deadly. It was always like that. Guan Kui was beautiful, but she was evil. Her family, her lover, and no one believed her. Yi Yuyu looked at Shenluo An and chuckled. She averted her eyes and said, "It's up to you whether you believe me or not. I've already conveyed my message. Since Guan Kui has regained consciousness, she probably needs you the most. It's a pity that I've been busy with work lately, so I won't be going back with you to see her. You can go by yourself." Chapter 1397. You're feeling guilty, aren't you? Shenluo An was already standing in front of Yi Yuyu. The distance between them was only a step. "Are you afraid that you'll feel guilty when you see her?" Shenluo An's eyes were burning. He looked at Yi Yuyu with a hint of anticipation. When he realized what he was feeling, Shenluo An was stunned. What was I anticipating? Hoping that this woman would repent, hoping that this woman would feel guilty? Shenluo An laughed at the thought. It wasn't clear whether he was saying it for Yi Yuyu or himself. Shenluo An muttered, "How is that possible? If I felt guilty, you would have felt guilty a long time ago." Yi Yuyu's gaze was calm as she replied, "I've said it before. It wasn't me. I won't admit to anything that wasn't done by me. I said the same thing back then, and I still say the same thing now." The anticipation in Shenluo An's heart completely dissipated. His gaze returned to coldness. With both hands in his pockets, he asked, "Aren't you going to invite me to your house?" "I'm sorry. I'm not interested." Yi Yuyu walked around him and prepared to leave. Before she could take a step forward, he grabbed her arm. Shenluo An stared at her. His gaze was malicious, and his grip was strong. He said, "But I'm very interested. We've been married for more than half a year, and we haven't slept together. You're still a virgin, aren't you? I'd like to verify it myself." When Yi Yuyu heard that, her breathing quickened. An indescribable emotion suddenly expanded in her heart and exploded. She waved her hand violently in an attempt to shove his hand away, but all she got was a heart-wrenching pain. "What? You don't dare?" The suspicion that Shenluo An had been harboring for a long time was confirmed. "Yi Yuyu, did you cheat on me?" It sounded like a question, but there was no doubt in his tone. Yi Yuyu's heart skipped a beat. Her face turned red. She gritted her teeth and yelled, "What are you doing? Let go of me." Shenluo An's masseter muscles tightened, and he tightened his grip on her hand. Yi Yuyu screamed and yelled, "Help! Let go of me." The commotion between Yi Yuyu and Shenluo An was very eye-catching at the entrance of the neighborhood. At that moment, Yi Yuyu's screams attracted the attention of many of the residents. The two burly men who lived in the neighborhood had just parked their car. When they heard Yi Yuyu's shout, they immediately looked over. At first glance, they recognized that the girl was their neighbor. The two of them rushed over and shouted, "What are you doing? Let go!" Shen Luo's heart sank. He loosened his grip and said, I'm her husband. No. She thanked the two burly men and ran toward the lobby of the neighborhood. You're right, Yi Yu said quickly after her hand was released from her grip. The two men didn't know Shen Luo and had never seen him before. When they saw that Yi Yu didn't have a strong reaction, they didn't meddle. However, Shen Luo didn't know which block, which floor, and which room Yi Yu lived in. Now that she had run away, he couldn't find her again. Shen Luo was so angry that he gritted his teeth. But soon, he calmed down and breathed a sigh of relief. He muttered, Shen Luo, calm down. Wait a minute, Shenjilia seems to be very familiar with that woman's sister. Furthermore, he was a frequent visitor to Kingstown. He should know which building and which room Yi Yu was staying in. Shen Luo thought for a moment and picked up his phone to call Shenjilia. Chapter 1398. Shenjilia was still in the hospital. He had just packed his things and was about to leave when he received a call from Shen Luo. Luo Ran had just picked up his car keys when he saw Shenjilia pick up the phone. He whistled and asked, a date with a pretty lady? It's my brother. Shenjilia picked up the phone and picked up his backpack. Hello? Xiaolai, are you close to Yi Qianqian? Shenjilia was surprised to hear Yi Qianqian's name from Shen Luo's mouth. As he walked, he asked, what's wrong? How do you know Yi Qianqian? I need to talk to her about something. Do you know where she lives? Give me the address. Shenjilia felt a little strange. Shen Luo has something to talk to Yi Qianqian about. Why does it sound so mysterious? Yi Qianqian hates Shen Luo. Is he going to cause trouble for Yi Qianqian? Shenjilia was silent for a moment before saying, I have a good relationship with Qianqian, but she's always moving. I don't know where she lives now. She used to live in Jinlonggang. Do you want to go there and take a look? Building 305. Go take a look. Jinlonggang? Shen Luo looked up at the entrance of the neighborhood. The words, Wangjiang No. 1, came into view. Isn't Yi Qianqian living with Yi Yu? Shen Luo frowned and nodded his head. All right. Thanks. Brother, why are you looking for her? It's nothing. Go on with your work. Oh, right. Our hospital recently received a special patient. Do you know who it is? Shenjilia walked out with Luo Ran. They were already at the elevator. I wanted to call you to tell you, but I forgot. When Shen Luo heard that, he could vaguely guess what was going on. He asked, who is it? Guan Kui. Shenjilia entered the elevator. The signal was a little bad. Shen Luo heard a distorted voice coming from the other side of the phone. It wasn't clear. He could only hear the word Guan, but he calmed down and shouted, who? Say that again? Shenjilia secretly clicked his tongue. Why is she so agitated? Guan Kui. She's the good friend that you and sister-in-law grew up together. She's sister-in-law's older sister, Guan Kui. Guan Kui. It's really her. Is she in your hospital now? Shen Luo's heart ached. The hospital where Shen Luo worked was a psychiatric hospital. Yes, she's not in good spirits, but she can recognize people. The last time I went to see her, she recognized me and asked about you. I told her that you married my sister-in-law. You told her? Shen Luo's voice was a little solemn. Shenjilia's voice suddenly rang out, and he paused for a moment. I did, Shen Luo asked, how did she react? Shenjilia didn't know what to say. He said, she looked happy, but at the same time, she didn't look too happy. After that, she was pushed away, and I haven't seen her since. I only saw her once. Shen Luo was silent for a moment. He glanced at Yi Yu's neighborhood and said, help me make an appointment. I'll go visit her tomorrow. Ah, aren't you in Kingstown? Will you be back tomorrow? Yes. Oh. Shinjilia stopped in his tracks. I'll make an appointment then. What time will you be arriving tomorrow? 2:00 in the afternoon. Are you alone? Shinjilia had no choice but to turn back. Chapter 1399. Yi Yuyu looked down from the curtains. When she saw Shen Luo and silhouette, the calm lake in her heart began to ripple. What is he doing? Yuyu. Yi Qianqian's voice suddenly rang out, startling Yi Yuyu. Yi Yuyu turned her head and said, "You scared me to death." Yi Qianqian didn't think much of it. She giggled and asked, "What's wrong with you? What are you looking at?" Yi Qianqian looked down. When she saw Shen Luo, she got angry. "What's that guy doing here again? Harassing you?" "No, he's just here to see me," Yi Yuyu said. "Pfft. I don't believe you. He didn't even come to see you when you were hospitalized. What nonsense are you talking to me about now?" Yi Qianqian rolled her eyes at her. "Hey, just leave him be." Yi Yuyu looked down at Shen Luo, and with her brows furrowed. Shen Luo is indeed different from before. Is it really as Li Jinan said? Is there something wrong with his mind? That shouldn't be the case. Shen Luo is such a capable and intelligent person. He should be able to adjust himself. With that thought, Yi Yuyu relaxed and changed the topic. What are we eating tonight? At the capital's leading psychiatric hospital. In VIP room 1, the afterglow of dusk shrouded the room in darkness. A young girl was curled up in the corner, staring at a painting hanging on the wall in front of her. Her eyes were empty, and she was in a daze. There was a sudden knock on the door. A middle-aged man walked in. When he saw the young girl in the room, his eyes were filled with pity. He walked to the wheelchair and squatted down. "Are you hungry?" he asked softly. The girl's eyes slowly began to glow. She turned her head and gently shook her head. "Daddy brought you your favorite cake. Do you want to eat some?" The girl shook her head again. Her face was expressionless. She turned her head and continued to stare at the painting. "Have some. After you finish one, Daddy has some good news for you." Guan Yanhong coaxed his daughter and said, "Come and have some." Guan Kui turned her head to look at her father and gently shook her head. "I'm not hungry." Her voice was hoarse. It sounded like the friction between two pieces of wood. It was unpleasant to the ears, but when Guan Yanhong heard it, it was as if he had heard the sound of nature. "No matter what, you have to eat some. Do you want to see Shen Luo?" Lo-en, those two words, which she hadn't heard in a long time, brought a spark to Guan Kui's eyes. She asked, "Did you tell him that I've recovered?" Guan Yanhong shook his head. "No, but he must have heard about it recently. He made an appointment to visit you tomorrow. Why don't you eat something first? Make him fat so that he'll like you tomorrow." There was finally some color in Guan Kui's eyes. She looked down at the cake in Guan Yanhong's hands and asked, "Dad, is Shen Luo married?" Guan Yanhong's smile froze as he looked at Guan Kui. Guan Kui's gaze was unexpectedly calm. Guan Yanhong looked at her for a long time before asking, "How did you know?" "With Yi Yuyu, right?" Guan Yanhong hesitated for a moment before nodding his head. Guan Kui lowered her head. Her lips curled into a smile. Very quickly, she burst out laughing. 7 years of nightmares, 7 years of tragedy, 7 years of hesitation, and 7 years of confusion. In those 7 years, Guan Kui hadn't thought about it for a single day. If she hadn't fallen off the cliff back then, would everything have been different? Chapter 1400. The best years of a woman's life had been wasted in vain. Her former lover had become the husband of another woman. Guan Kui's smile widened and she said, "Just you wait. I'll make them pay for what they owe me." Guan Yanhong's heart ached as he looked at his daughter. All he could do was smile and bring the cake to her mouth. It was the third day since Ming returned to Kingstown. Lily stayed with the Shen family in the capital and saw Shen Manting every day. At first, she felt a little awkward, but after a few days together, she got used to it. Although she was used to being with the Shen family, she wasn't used to living alone in the capital. Lily lay on the bed with her phone in her hand and sent Ming an emoji. Yuli, hubby, squinting smile, Yuli, moi, Yuli, rose, Ming, Yuli, squinting smile, what are you doing? Ming, no one is doing it when you're not here, Yuli, how can you be so perverted? Ming, no one is perverted when you're not here, Yuli, then I'll sneak back to Kingstown, okay? What are you doing? Ming, okay. I'm working. The photo was of a computer desktop with a large stack of documents. It looked like it was densely packed with words and a lot of data that Lily couldn't understand. Lily didn't even look at it and replied, it's past 9 o'clock, and you're still working. Ming, you're not here, so I can only work. Lily smiled and rolled on the bed with her cell phone in her arms. A silly laugh came out of her mouth. All of a sudden, Lily stood up and clicked on a video call with Ming. Ming picked up quickly. In the background was the wedding photo behind his chair in his office. It seemed like he was still in the office. Lily lay on the bed and said, why aren't you going home? Men who sleep too much will have kidney problems. Ming smiled and said, don't worry. Even if I have kidney problems, I can still serve you. Lily said. You're always talking dirty. I miss you. Ming suddenly changed the topic. He pursed his lips and looked a little aggrieved. Hey, why don't I go to the capital tomorrow to look for you? This kind of life is too hard. I want to, but Grandma and Dad both said that we can't meet. Aren't we meeting now? Ming chuckled. You don't have to listen to those old antiques. It's not the same, Lily said. Not seeing each other is probably to increase the mystery. We're already so familiar with each other, so there shouldn't be any mystery left. Lily turned over in bed and said, hey, let me tell you. Lily turned on her gossipy mode and told him all the gossip she had heard about square dancing and the Shen family's gossips. Ming nodded from time to time and listened with great interest. The two of them chatted until late at night before hanging up reluctantly. Looking at the time, it was already past 11 o'clock. Lily's mouth was a little dry. She got up and put on her shoes to go to the kitchen to get some water. When she passed by the room next door, she heard a stifled cry. Lily stopped in her tracks and turned her head to look. The white door was ajar, and the sound of sobbing could be heard intermittently. It wasn't loud, but it piqued Lily's curiosity. Lily quietly walked over and leaned against the wall, trying to eavesdrop through the crack of the door. However, the sound of sobbing was like an illusion. It was no longer there. Chapter 14:01. Lily reached out and gently knocked on the door. It was very quiet inside. It was as if the sound Lily had just heard was really an illusion. Lily stood there for a while. When no one answered, she turned around and prepared to leave. Suddenly, there was a soft sound behind her. She turned around and saw that the door had been opened. It was dark inside. Shen Manting was barefoot and wearing a thin nightgown. Her eyes were a little red, and she looked like she had just woken up. Seeing that it was Lily, Shen Manting paused and asked, what's the matter? Lily stood at the door and felt a little awkward when she heard that. She shook her head and said, nothing. I just heard some sounds and felt that you didn't seem very happy, so I came to take a look. Shen Manting stood at the door and looked at Lily. After a while, she said, thank you. Lily was stunned and a little embarrassed. It's nothing. I'll leave first. Do you want to come in for a chat? Shen Manting's voice wasn't loud, and it was a little soft. She could hear that she wasn't in a good mood. All along, Lily didn't like Shen Manting. In fact, she was a little disgusted with her. But after a few days together, Yu Lily realized that Shen Manting didn't seem to have any friends. Every day, Yu Lily would go back and forth between the company and home. Yu Lily had accompanied old Mrs. Shen and heard a lot about Shen Manting. This girl is very lonely. Yu Lily thought about it and nodded. Shen Manting's room was smaller than old Mrs. Shen's, but it was bigger than the guest room that Yu Lily was staying in. What made Yu Lily feel a little strange was that in addition to Shen Manting's things, there was also a man's things in the room. The man's tie was on the bedside table. It was particularly conspicuous in this woman's room. Is it Shen Luopen? Yu Lily maintained her composure as she walked in. With a smile, she remarked, "Your room is so big." Shen Manting smiled and sat on the bed. She asked, "When is your wedding?" "The 8th of next month," Yu Lily said. It was supposed to be last month, but Oh Ming's mother said that day wasn't very good. "The 8th of next month is the best day of the year." "I see. Happy wedding." Shen Manting smiled. "Do you know that I envy you so much? Oh Ming is really good to you." This, Yu Lily suddenly regretted coming in. It was awkward to sit in the same room with her man's ex-fiancé and talk about this kind of thing. "Ha ha." Yu Lily laughed dryly. "It's all right. He's always been like this." The smile on Shen Manting's face was a little dry and didn't reach her eyes. She asked, "Do you need a bridesmaid at your wedding?" "I'll be your bridesmaid in Kingstown, okay?" Yu Lily was even more shocked. She looked at Shen Manting in astonishment and asked, "You want to be my bridesmaid?" Can I?" "Since I can't be Oh Ming's bride, I'll be your bridesmaid. When you return to Kingstown, take me with you, okay?" Shen Manting looked at Yu Lily with a pleading look in her eyes. Yu Lily felt a little strange. Why would Shen Manting make such a request out of nowhere? "I don't have many friends, and I've never been a bridesmaid before. If you don't agree, I may never be one in this life," Shen Manting said with a smile. "I can't even be a bride, and I can't even be a bridesmaid." Chapter 1402. Yu Lily had always sympathized with Shen Manting. When she heard that, her heart was filled with compassion. After thinking about it, she agreed. After that, Yu Lily and Shen Manting didn't have much to talk about. After exchanging a few words, Yu Lily left Shen Manting's room. Finally, she went to the kitchen to drink some water before returning to her room. However, the more she thought about it, the more she felt that something was wrong. Why would Shen Manting want to be his bridesmaid out of nowhere? Is she plotting something? Yu Lily rolled over and got up. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that something was wrong. She couldn't be blamed for thinking that way. Shen Manting really had too many things that worried her. Is she trying to seduce Oh Ming? The more she thought about it, the more certain she was. Yu Lily picked up her phone and sent a text message to Oh Ming. It was the weekend, so Yu didn't go out. She slept until 10 o'clock. When she woke up, the sun was already shining brightly. After washing up and eating breakfast, Yu changed into her sportswear and put on her headphones to go to the gym. When she was out of the neighborhood, Yu looked around. Shen Luo and didn't know her new phone number, and she had blocked his communication app. He didn't even know which building she lived in. Is he waiting for me here? After looking around, she realized that there was no one. Yu breathed a sigh of relief, but at the same time, she felt an inexplicable sense of loss. In the end, he still left. After the gym, Yu received a message from Shinjilia, sister-in-law. "Are you here yet? It's almost time." Yu saw the strange WeChat message and was confused. She replied. Immediately after, Shinjilia called. "Have you arrived? Didn't you say you were coming to the hospital today?" Shinjilia's voice was filled with doubt. Her mood is not very stable. She might not be able to see guests later. What? Brother-in-law, did you get the wrong person? Hearing that, Shinjilia was even more confused. Didn't you go back to the capital with my brother? You said you would visit Guan Kui at 2 in the afternoon. You're not coming? Yi Yuyu was silent for a moment and said, I don't know. Is Guan Kui in your hospital? Yeah. Didn't my brother tell you? That's weird. No. Yi Yuyu suddenly thought of the day before. Did he come looking for me just to talk about that? She asked about Guan Kui's recent situation. When she heard that Guan Kui was doing well, she finally agreed and hung up the phone. Guan Kui is awake. She had finally regained consciousness after 7 years. It was time to prove her innocence. What happened back then was the thorn in their side. If Guan Kui could explain things clearly, wouldn't things be fine between them? She was still Yi Yuyu, and he was still her brother Luo, and everything was like before. She picked up her phone and booked the earliest flight to the capital. In the small park, the grass sprouted gently, and the branches were just green. The weather was also getting warmer day by day. Yi Tian pushed her wheelchair as she sat in the park. Every now and then, she would see a bird flying by. She would chuckle and point in that direction as she said, Look, Yi. Another bird is flying by. Chapter 1403. Yes, but he hasn't arrived yet. Yi Tian looked at her watch and asked, Do you know who's coming today? Luo, and Guan Kui was filled with anticipation, but her eyes quickly became unreadable. And Yuyu. Yi Tian nodded her head and looked into the distance. With a look of surprise, she said, Look, Luo and is here. When Guan Kui heard that, her eyes lit up. She raised her head and looked in the direction that Yi Tian had pointed. The sun was shining brightly that day. A tall figure walked up. His eyes were the same as they had been in the past, but his facial features were more defined. Shen Luo and was dressed in a casual suit. It was Guan Kui's favorite off-white color. He stepped forward in his clean and shiny leather shoes. With one look, it was obvious that he had put in a lot of effort into his appearance. When Yi Tian saw Shen Luo and in this state, she felt relieved. It seemed that although Shen Luo and was married to her, he hadn't forgotten about Kui at all. Yi Tian stood up and gently pushed the wheelchair forward. Mom, Shen Luo and greeted Yi Tian with a gentle smile. When Guan Kui heard that greeting, she didn't feel very comfortable. Shen Luo and was holding supplements and beautiful flowers in his hands. He handed the flowers to Guan Kui with a gentle smile and said, Long time no see, Kui. Guan Kui looked at Shen Luo and her smile widened as she accepted the flowers. Luo and I've missed you so much. As she spoke, her emotions flowed naturally. Her eyes were filled with longing. I've been thinking about you, Luo and me too. Shen Luo and looked at Guan Kui with the same expression as before. He quickly handed the supplements to Yi Tian and said, Mom, I'll take a walk with Kui. Yi Tian nodded her head and quickly left. Shen Luo and looked at her legs. His heart ached as he asked, Are you still not healed? Guan Kui shook her head. The smile on her face was bitter. It's good that they're crippled. It's better than having my legs healed and not being able to dance in the future. Nonsense. You'll get better. Shen Luo and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. I thought you wouldn't wake up. It's great to see that you're awake. Luo and I woke up a long time ago. It's just that I didn't want to see anyone, Guan Kui said gravely. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. I'm afraid I'll act up and beat you up. Wouldn't that be a grave sin for me? With that, the two of them looked at each other and smiled. By the time she reached the capital, it was already past 7 p.m. She asked for Shenjilia's address and instructed him not to tell anyone about it. Then, she hailed a cab from the airport to the hospital where Guan Kui was staying. However, Guan Kui wasn't in the room. Just as she was about to ask the front desk, she heard a familiar male voice. Shen Luo An's voice sounded very cheerful. He was slowly approaching them as he spoke. She turned her head, and Shen Luo and looked over at the same time. Their eyes met, and they were speechless. The air was inexplicably quiet. Yi Yuyu had specially dressed up that day. She was wearing the season's latest dress and a pair of pretty and luxurious sandals. She looked very dignified. When Guan Kui saw Yi Yuyu, her hands gripped the sides of the wheelchair tightly. She glared at Yi Yuyu. Her breathing was heavy, and her eyes reddened. She gritted her teeth and growled, "Yi Yuyu." Chapter 1404. Yi Yuyu stood where she was and called out, "Sister." Ah! Guan Kui's eyes were bloodshot as she screamed. She stretched out her arms, and her entire body fell forward. She fell from the wheelchair onto the ground. This scene gave everyone a fright. Shen Luo and jumped and instinctively went over to help Guan Kui up. Yi Yuyu ran over as well. Before she could get close, she heard Guan Kui's cries. "Yi Yuyu! Yi Yuyu! Yi Yuyu! Why did you do this to me? Why?" Yi Yuyu stopped in her tracks. She looked at Guan Kui in a daze. She found it hard to believe. When Shen Luo and heard Guan Kui's cries, his expression turned to one of annoyance. He yelled, "Get lost!" Yi Yuyu stood rooted to the ground as she watched Guan Kui being carried by Shen Luo and her heart ached. Guan Kui buried herself in Shen Luo and's arms and wailed. Her hands clutched his shirt. As she cried, she said, "I know you like Shen Luo, but why did you ruin my life? My life could have been as beautiful as yours. Why?" Shen Luo and's grip on Guan Kui tightened. In a low voice, he comforted her, "It's okay. Don't be afraid. It's all in the past. Don't cry. Be a good girl." Guan Kui cried even harder. She clutched his shirt tightly and said, Luo and Shen Luo and's heart ached even more. The hatred in his eyes grew as he looked at Yi Yuyu. In an angry voice, he yelled, "Get lost!" Yi Yuyu carried Guan Kui back into the ward. She stood there in a daze. She helped push the wheelchair into the room. When she entered, she saw Shen Luo and gently covering Guan Kui with a blanket. This kind of gaze, this kind of gentle action, had also appeared in front of her not so long ago. However, after that incident, there had been no more. Shen Luo and Guan Kui's crying gradually stopped. She squinted her eyes as if she didn't know Yi Yuyu had entered. "Has Yuyu left?" Shen Luo and turned his head and looked at Yi Yuyu. His eyes darkened. He turned his head back and replied, "She's left." Guan Kui seemed to feel even more aggrieved. She sobbed softly and said, I'm sorry. I still can't forgive her. Luo en. I'm your good friend, right? You won't leave me, will you?" Shen Luo and's heart ached even more. He sat on the edge of the bed and said softly, "Don't talk nonsense. Go to sleep if you're tired. I'll stay here with you." Guan Kui sobbed. She closed her eyes and said, "Actually, I can understand why Yuyu pushed me off the cliff all those years ago. At that time, Buzz." Yi Yuyu's mind was clouded. An indescribable rage spread from her tailbone to her entire body. Almost instinctively, she yelled, "Bullsh *T." Guan Kui looked as if she had been given a fright. Her body trembled violently. She opened her eyes and looked in Yi Yuyu's direction. In a daze, she said, "Yuyu, Guan Kui." Yi Yuyu walked forward and glared at Guan Kui. She was furious. "You were the one who fell that night. Why are you framing me? No wonder everyone blamed me all these years. Even Shen Luo and didn't trust me. So." Guan Kui said it herself. Chapter 1405. How could that be? Hasn't Guan Kui been in a coma ever since that night? After she fainted, Guan Kui had been in a half-asleep state. She hadn't been in a good state. When she found out that her legs had been paralyzed, she had lost her mind and been sent to a mental hospital. It had been 7 years. For the past 7 years, everyone had blamed her, resented her, and hated her. They had said that Yi Yuyu had been jealous of Guan Kui and had pushed her off the cliff. Yi Yuyu had been unable to defend herself. She had been waiting and enduring. She had been waiting for Guan Kui to wake up and prove her innocence. She had wanted Guan Kui to explain herself that it had been a stormy night, and she had accidentally stepped on nothing and fallen off the cliff. Who would have thought that such a public opinion and such words would come from Guan Kui's own mouth? Yi Yuyu couldn't believe it. The anger and complicated feelings in her heart instantly filled her. The 7 years of suffering and the 7 years of enduring had all been wishful thinking on her part. In their hearts, they no longer believed her. No one believed her. Yi Yuyu looked at Shen Luo'an. Her eyes burned, and her vision blurred. Brother Luo'an, it wasn't me. It really wasn't me. She fell off on her own. When Guan Kui heard Yi Yuyu's words, she hugged Shen Luo'an's arm and curled up into a ball. She cried even harder. Her sobs were intermittent, and she sobbed with great difficulty. She was like a frightened pet. Her eyes looked at Yi Yuyu with fear. Luo'an, Luo'an. Guan Kui hugged Shen Luo'an. Her body trembled violently. Luo'an. Save me. She wants to kill me. Hurry up and chase her away. Hurry. Shen Luo'an hugged Guan Kui, his childhood sweetheart who had finally regained consciousness. The anger in his chest was about to burst out. He turned his head and roared, "Get lost. What are you still doing here?" Yi Yuyu was stunned by his roar, but she didn't move. The tears in her eyes gathered even more. She looked at Shen Luo'an and raised her hand to wipe her tears. Biting her lower lip, she yelled, "Guan Kui, do you dare to touch your own conscience and say it? Did I push you off that year? In front of Brother Luo'an, touch your conscience and swear. What happened that year? Tell me." Guan Kui hugged Shen Luo'an. Her body trembled even more violently, and she cried even louder. "Why are you doing this to me? I'm already a cripple. Yuyu, aren't we sisters? You said that we were going to be good sisters for life. Why are you forcing me like this?" Shen Luo'an was even more furious. He picked up an apple from the fruit plate at the head of the bed and threw it at Yi Yuyu. He roared, "Get lost." The huge apple smashed into Yi Yuyu's chest. For a moment, the impact numbed her entire body. Thud. The apple fell to the ground, bounced a few times, and rolled back to Shen Luo'an's feet. The part of Yi Yuyu's chest that had been smashed felt as if it had been rotted. The pain spread through her internal organs and every nerve in her body. There was no leeway. When Shen Luo'an heard the muffled sound, he seemed to come back to his senses. There was a look of astonishment in his eyes as he looked down at the apple on the ground. Chapter 1406. That smile completely shattered any hope Yi Yuyu had of getting lucky. Guan Kui. She didn't misunderstand. She did it on purpose. She framed me on purpose to make everyone hate me, didn't she? The corner that she had been holding on to all this time seemed to crumble. She had thought that as long as Guan Kui woke up, the world would clear her name. Who would have thought that Guan Kui's awakening would not bring her dawn? Instead, it would bring her endless darkness? This kind of darkness, layer by layer, covered her closest family, covered her true love, and now, even her future was a blur. She looked at Shen Luo'an and Guan Kui hugging each other in front of her. Their deep feelings for each other made her appear even more like a joke. Yi Yuyu's vision was blurry, but her rationality prevented her from crying in front of them. She forced herself to remain calm and laughed coldly as she looked at them. Her gaze was filled with sorrow and seemed to be watery, but it was also filled with an indescribable pity. She seemed to sympathize with Guan Kui and Shen Luo'an. Or perhaps, both. When Shen Luo saw the look in her eyes, he felt an inexplicable ache in his heart. For some strange reason, Shen Luo felt guilty. He opened his mouth and said, "Yu, the corners of Yi Yu's lips curled up in a smile. The sarcasm was clear in her words. Without waiting for Shen Luo to finish his sentence, she had already turned around and walked out of the ward with her head held high. Yi Yu's back view was frail and stubborn. It was as clean as when she had carried her luggage and separated from the Guan family. There was no reluctance. Shen Luo panicked. He instinctively let go of Guan Kui and stood up. Just as he was about to walk away, Shen Luo stopped. "Ah!" A scream came from behind him. Guan Kui hugged her head. Her hair was disheveled, and her face was pale. Her expression was one of despair. Luo. Shen Luo stopped in his tracks. He froze on the spot, unsure of where to go. Guan Kui dragged her body over with both hands. She reached out for Shen Luo. Her face was covered in tears. "Don't go. Please don't leave me." Shen Luo was in so much pain that he was trembling. The screams in his ears intensified the intensity of the pain. Even he didn't know if he was hurting for Yi Yu or Guan Kui. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down. He felt his throat go dry. He turned around and supported Guan Kui. In a gentle voice, he said, "It's all right. I'm not leaving." It was as if Guan Kui had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. She grabbed onto Shen Luo's hands and buried her head into his embrace. Her tears turned into a smile. Guan Kui, who was crying tears of joy, didn't miss out on the man beside her. As he held her up, his gaze lingered on the door. Her hands gripped him even tighter. Guan Kui didn't want to let go at all. Her breathing was heavy, and the hatred in her eyes deepened. Yi Yu didn't know how long she had been walking. The view in front of her was getting wider and wider, but her vision was getting blurry. After entering the hospital elevator, Yi Yu couldn't hold it in any longer. She covered her mouth and sobbed softly. Chapter 1407. She lowered her head and walked forward. The darkness around her seemed to once again obscure her vision, and she lost her sense of direction. The passing cars, the walking townsfolk, and the warm yellow street lights shone down, but the atmosphere in the sky was overshadowed by the liveliness, making the surroundings even more gloomy. The gloomy atmosphere made Yi Yu's heart tremble with pain. All the nerves in her body began to convulse uncontrollably. Her head spun, and she couldn't take it anymore. She squatted down and burst into tears. The passers-by noticed Yi Yu, but they only took a few glances. No one went forward to comfort her. Rumble. Lightning flashed across the gloomy dark clouds. The muffled sound of thunder warned the passers-by to take shelter. After the thunderous roar, bean-sized raindrops fell impatiently, hitting people's hair and faces, making them feel cold and numb. Clatter. The rain grew heavier. Yi Yu squatted on the ground. Her strength seemed to have been drained. Her choked sobs were almost inaudible in the noisy rain. The people who took shelter from the rain ran quickly. Their footsteps splashed water, and the water was covered up again. Children without umbrellas had to run hard. Because they had to hurry home so that they wouldn't be caught in the rain. What about children without homes? Yi Yu laughed at herself and hugged herself even tighter. Suddenly, the sound of the rain seemed to have softened. The cold rain that had been falling continuously was also stopped. Yi Yu was stunned. She raised her head and opened her wet and hazy eyes. The first thing she saw was a sharp, clear, and cold face. The pair of eyes that were as calm as the wind and the moon looked at Yi Yu calmly. It was like an ancient spring, and no one could read his emotions. Yi Yu looked at the man in front of her in a daze. She blinked and looked at him a few times, but his face was still the same. "Is it cool?" His voice was cold, and she couldn't tell whether he was happy or angry. She held the big black umbrella with her well-defined knuckles, completely protecting her body. Yi Yuyu opened her mouth, but she didn't know what to say. She looked down at herself. She was drenched, and she seemed to be in a sorry state. Let's go. Li Jinan couldn't help but pull her up. He stuffed the umbrella into her hands and took off his suit jacket to drape it over her. A scorching warmth enveloped her. She felt a lump in her throat, and tears started to well up in her eyes again. Li Jinan acted as if he hadn't seen it. He took the umbrella back, put one arm around her shoulder, and led her to his car. When she got into the car, Yi Yuyu was still dripping with water. She shrunk her hands and feet cautiously. She was afraid that she would dirty herself further. Li Jinan glanced at her, took out a handkerchief from his pocket, and threw it to her. Then, he drove steadily. After getting into the car, Li Jinan didn't say a word. Yi Yuyu took the handkerchief and gently wiped her face and hair. She turned her head and stole a glance at Li Jinan. Li Jinan's side profile was chiseled, and the lines of his jaw were tight. His lips were pursed tightly, and he looked a little unhappy. Yi Yuyu shrunk her feet and lowered her head to look at the handkerchief in her hand. In a low voice, she said, "Thank you, GM Li." After she opened her mouth, Yi Yuyu realized that her voice was a little hoarse. It was choked with sobs, and she sounded even more pathetic. Chapter 1408. Yi Yuyu's hair stood on end from his stare. She lowered her head in confusion and asked, "GM Li, why are you here?" "The headquarters of NC Entertainment is in Kingstown." "As the CEO, why is Li Jinan always heading to the capital?" When she asked that question, Li Jinan's gaze deepened as he looked at Yi Yuyu. He slowly said, "You can ask your sister that question." "Get out of the car." "My sister? Yi Qianqian?" Yi Yuyu was stunned for a moment. She looked out the window. It was a famous 5-star platinum hotel in the capital. When she saw the hotel, Yi Yuyu's body stiffened. She turned her head to look at Li Jinan. Yi Yuyu was unwilling to move. She asked, "GM Li, what are we doing here?" "I'm taking a shower, changing into some clean clothes, and getting some rest." Li Jinan's voice was calm. It was impossible to tell whether he was happy or angry. His eyes were calm and steady. Yi Yuyu was still unwilling to get out of the car. She said, "Let's go to my place. It's not far from here. I have clothes at home. I can go back and change." When Li Jinan heard that, his hand that had been unbuckling his seatbelt paused. He turned his head to look at Yi Yuyu with a half-smile and asked, "Are you inviting me to stay at your place?" Yi Yuyu immediately shook her head. "No." Li Jinan buckled his seatbelt back in. Without another word, he turned the car around and was on the main road. "Which direction?" "Why don't you go to the hotel?" "I'll go back on my own." Yi Yuyu was a little scared. The feeling of being drenched was unbearable. Even though the heater was turned on, Yi Yuyu still felt a little chilly. She had been frightened by this guy. Li Jinan didn't reply. He looked left and right and asked, "Left, right?" "Yes." After Yi Yuyu answered, she suddenly realized something. She nervously clenched her fists. "GM Li, I'll send you back," Li Jinan said. He glanced at her casually. "I don't stay at a stranger's house." When Yi Yuyu heard that, she let out a sigh of relief and calmed down. Very quickly, they arrived at Yi Yuyu's place. Li Jinan opened the car door and took out an umbrella. He opened the door to the front passenger seat to cover her head. Yi Yuyu carefully got out of the car and looked down at her soaked clothes. The pink dress outlined the lines of her bra. Through the thin spring clothes, the spring scenery inside was faintly discernible. She instinctively tightened her jacket and crossed her arms as she walked beside Li Jinan. Li Jinan used to be a soldier. Normally, she wouldn't have felt it. However, the moment he stood next to her, she could feel the awe-inspiring aura emanating from his bones. It made her tremble slightly. For some reason, she felt a sense of nervousness. She entered the password and opened the door. She let her hair down and asked, "GM Li, what would you like to drink?" Li Jinan didn't feel like a guest at all. As soon as he came in, he sat on the sofa, supported his head with his hands, rubbed his temples, and said firmly, "No, go take a shower." Yi Yuyu's body stiffened. Does that mean that he has no intention of leaving? Li Jinan noticed that she was looking at him strangely. He looked up and raised his eyebrows. "Do you know how to shower? Do you need help?" Chapter 1409. For some reason, Yi Yuyu felt nervous. This man. Is he really going to spend the night at my place? No, that can't be. He had said it himself that he wouldn't. This guy wouldn't go back on his word and slap himself in the face. Furthermore, I don't think we're particularly close. Am I right? Yi Yuyu felt a little mystified. She walked into the bathroom with her heart in her mouth. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her hair was messy and dripping wet. Her face was pale, and her eyes were red and swollen. The makeup she had put on before leaving the house had been ruined. There were 2 large dark circles under her eyes. From the looks of it, the word "battered" was not enough to describe it. Yi Yuyu laughed bitterly. She felt that she was a pitiful fool. How could I be so narcissistic as to think that Li Jinan was trying to woo me in this state? It was most likely that he was just pitiful. Yi Yuyu looked into the mirror and reached out to touch the spot where her heart had been smashed. She pressed it gently. That apple wasn't just an apple. Li Jinan looked around the living room. The large photo hanging in the living room was a photo poster of Yi Yuyu. It was very fashionable and high-end, black and white. It looked exquisite and beautiful. Li Jinan raised his eyebrows in satisfaction. He had thought that she would enlarge the wedding photo and hang it in her apartment. But then, he realized that it was a bachelor's apartment. Yes, it was a marriage of convenience. Since it was a marriage of convenience, it meant that they didn't live together or sleep together. Nothing that shouldn't have happened had happened. Li Jinan's mood brightened at that thought. Under the large photo, he saw a few small ornaments. They looked like they were made of clay. There were a few smiling dolls. One of them looked similar to Yi Yuyu, and the boy next to it. Could it be Shenluoben? Li Jinan picked up the boy and flipped it over. Indeed, he saw the word "an" at the bottom. The other dolls had the words K and U written below them. K was probably the stepsister that Yi Qianqian had mentioned. The former ballet genius who had become paralyzed in both legs, Guan Kui. Li Jinan felt that it was a pity for that girl, but his eyes didn't linger on her. He turned and walked into the kitchen. The fridge was empty. There was nothing inside. Moreover, everything was very clean, and many things were covered up. It was obvious that she had not been back since she returned from Kingstown. After another round of observation, Yi Yuyu slowly emerged from the room. Her hair was blow-dried and loose, and she walked out in a casual home suit. Her face was bare, and she looked very clean. Li Jinan glanced at it and calmly replied, "It's much cleaner than before." As he spoke, he glanced at his watch. "It's past 8 p.m. I haven't eaten yet. Have you?" Yi Yuyu was already hungry. When she heard that, she shook her head and replied, "There's a restaurant downstairs that's pretty good. You'll be able to eat there when you get down." Was this the meaning of sending the guest off? What kind of person was Li Jinan? How could he not understand? But he pretended not to hear and said, "I want to eat noodles. Do you know how to make it? Let's go buy ingredients together." He didn't care whether Yi Yuyu agreed to it or not, or whether she was willing to do it or not. Chapter 1410. Yi Yuyu didn't move. She stood rooted to the spot and looked at him. After a long time, she lowered her head and said, GM Lee, thank you for today, but I'm not in the mood. So, please leave quickly and don't bother me anymore. Naturally, the meaning behind his words was self-evident. Li Jinan didn't have the slightest intention of leaving. He stood there with a vexed expression and said, what a coincidence. I'm not in a good mood either. Sigh, it's all because I'm hungry. Why don't you take me to the nearby supermarket? I'll buy some food. There's a supermarket downstairs at the entrance of the estate, but the vegetables should be sold out by now. Even if there's still some left, they won't be fresh. So, she didn't want to go. Yi Yuyu's words were vague, but she knew that Li Jinan would understand. Li Jinan didn't seem to understand what she was trying to say. He nodded his head and said, it's fine. Let's go. If we don't go now, we won't be able to buy anything that isn't fresh. GM Li, I'm not in the mood to cook, she said. It's fine, Li Jinan immediately replied. His expression was impassive as he said, I'll do it, but I have no sense of direction. Even if you tell me where it is, I might not be able to find it. Besides, I'm not familiar with this place. What if I get lost? Yi Yuyu was speechless. He's a grown man. How could he get lost? Yi Yuyu was at a loss for words. Since he had already put it that way, it would be rude of her to reject him. She thought about it and changed her shoes. She followed Li Jinan down the stairs in silence. When they reached the supermarket, many of the shelves were empty. After he entered, he looked left and right, while Yi Yuyu stood to the side. What should I buy? I've never bought vegetables before. Is this vegetable okay? Li Jinan picked up a handful of dried rapeseed. I think I've seen my mother cook this before. It's quite delicious. As he spoke, he tossed the rapeseed into the basket. Yi Yuyu took a look and frowned. Didn't you say you wanted to cook noodles? Yeah. With this vegetable? Yi Yuyu found it a little ridiculous. She put the vegetable back and walked over to grab a bunch of lettuce. This is the best way to cook noodles. Is that so? Li Jinan looked enlightened. Do I still need to buy eggs? Well, do you want scallions? Eat, he blurted out. Coriander? I'm not picky. Yi Yuyu glanced at him, then turned to look at the fresh produce section. She saw the red finger peppers and asked, do you eat spicy food? Since he's from Kingstown, he shouldn't be able to handle spicy food. This, he looked at her and asked in return, do you like it? I like it. Eat. Yi Yuyu grabbed a bag and placed it in the basket. She then took some noodles and made her way to the living area. Li Jinan watched as Yi Yuyu picked up a tube of toothpaste, a toothbrush, and a variety of toiletries for each person. Only one person? Was it for her own use or for him? Li Jinan's mind was a little active. He was a little distracted on the way. After paying the bill with Yi Yuyu, he returned to her house and took the groceries to the kitchen. Yi Yuyu put the groceries down and walked into the kitchen, only to find that the vegetables had been washed into a mess. That's not washing vegetables. That's practically torturing vegetables. GM Li, do you know how to cook? Li Jinan turned to look at her and answered honestly, no. Dash. Chapter 14:11. He wouldn't take on everything so easily. Yi Yuyu suddenly felt speechless. She looked at him and walked up to him helplessly. She took the things from his hands and said, go boil the water. Li Jinan deeply felt that he was being ignored. He rubbed his nose and replied, okay. After looking around, Li Jinan finally found a kettle to boil water. After filling the water dispenser, he placed it on the stove to boil. Yi Yuyu was focused on arranging the ingredients. When she turned around and saw that Li Jinan had used a kettle, her expression became complicated. She looked at him and asked, GM Li, are you thirsty? I'm not thirsty. Then why are you boiling the water? Li Jinan frowned and looked at her with confusion. he asked. Weren't you the one who asked me to boil it? Yi Yuyu was speechless. Yi Yuyu was speechless. Without a word, she turned around and poured the half-boiled water into a clean pot. Li Jinan watched from the side as she busied herself. He felt a little guilty and asked, "Do you need my help?" Yi Yuyu looked at him and sighed helplessly. "Help me get the bowls and chopsticks. They're in the disinfecting cabinet." "Okay." Li Jinan took 2 pairs of chopsticks and 2 bowls. He placed them on the table that Yi Yuyu had just wiped. Following that, he went in to help carry the noodles out. The noodles had just been cooked, and they were hot to the touch. Li Jinan's hand touched the handle of the pot and was caught off guard. He immediately pulled his hand back. Yi Yuyu was shocked. She hurried forward and asked, "Are you all right?" As she spoke, she pried Li Jinan's hand open. When she saw the burn mark left by the metal handle, her frown deepened. She pulled Li Jinan to the sink and turned on the tap to wash it. "How could you be so careless? How could you touch a pot that's just been cooked? You're not a child anymore. Don't you have any common sense?" Yi Yuyu muttered as she carefully rubbed some detergent on his hand. Her movements were light and gentle. There was a prickling pain from the burn, but it was nothing to Li Jinan. But being held in Yi Yuyu's small, soft hand, somehow made him feel better. The corners of Li Jinan's lips curled up slightly. His dark eyes stared at the top of her dark head. The faint fragrance of her hair drifted over, and it made his mood change subtly. It was the first time that he had been so close to a woman. Even when he was teaching Su Qinsi, he had never been so close to her. This feeling seemed pretty good. Yi Yuyu lowered her head to help Li Jinan rinse the water. When she raised her head, she saw Li Jinan staring at her from the reflective wall. She let go of him and said, "I'll be fine after I wash up. Aren't you hungry? Let's eat the noodles first. You'll be fine after applying some ointment later." With that, she turned around and quickened her pace. Li Jinan looked at his hand and said, "There are still bubbles. Don't you have bubbles on your hands?" Yi Yuyu looked down at her hand. White foam was on it. He was walking too fast just now, so he didn't notice this problem. She seemed to have overreacted a little. Yi Yuyu's face heated up for no apparent reason. She awkwardly retracted her hand and quickened her pace as she replied, "No." Chapter 14:12. After washing his hands, Li Jinan took the bowl of noodles out and divided it into 2 bowls. Yi Yuyu slowly walked out of the kitchen. Li Jinan sat down and said, "Dig in. It looks delicious." Yi Yuyu's lips twitched. She sat across from him and said, "Give it a try." Li Jinan didn't stand on ceremony. He picked up the chopsticks and put it into his mouth. Yi Yuyu was shocked and reminded him, "Be careful, it's hot." "I'm not afraid." Li Jinan ate as if he had tasted the best delicacy in the world. "It's really delicious. Are you good at cooking?" Yi Yuyu shook her head. "I only know how to cook noodles. I don't know anything else." Li Jinan nodded his head. His gaze shifted to her face and then back to the bowl in front of her. He didn't stop eating. In no time, he had finished the bowl. When he looked up, he realized that Yi Yuyu's bowl hadn't been touched. "It won't taste good when it's cold," Li Jinan reminded her. Yi Yuyu pushed the bowl toward him and said, "The temperature should be just right at this time. You should eat this bowl too. Aren't you hungry?" Yi Yuyu shook her head. Her eyes were clear and bright. Li Jinan didn't move. He picked up the noodles from the pot and put them in his bowl. There was exactly 1 bowl left. He said, "Eat it. No matter how bad your mood is, don't let yourself go hungry." "No, I'm just tired. I want to sleep." Yi Yuyu was obviously not in the mood. As she spoke, she stood up and said, "Leave after you finish eating. Leave the bowl and chopsticks here. I'll wash them tomorrow." Li Jinan didn't know what had happened that day, but he could tell from her expression that she was in a terrible mood. Eat before you sleep. You got off the plane this afternoon and stayed in the hospital for so long. You probably haven't had dinner yet. Li Jinan stood up and walked in her direction. After you finish eating, I'll take you somewhere to relax. GM Li, I'm not in the mood. Yi Yu looked at Li Jinan with impatience in her eyes. Li Jinan pretended not to understand. He turned her over and said, you have to eat even if you're not in the mood. I'll leave after you finish eating. Yi Yu was speechless. Why hadn't she realized that he was so thick-skinned? Yi Yu turned her head and saw the delicious noodles that night. In the end, she sat down and picked up her chopsticks. She picked up a mouthful and placed it in her mouth. When the smell entered her nose, Yi Yu couldn't help but sniff. This was the smell of a noodle restaurant that Shen Luo and liked to frequent when he was a teenager. On Shen Luo An's 21st birthday, she went to the noodle restaurant to learn cooking skills from a master in order to surprise him. When the young Shen Luo An arrived late, he was so touched that his eyes turned red. He hugged her in front of everyone, looked at her, and said word by word, in the future, you'll make noodles for me for the rest of my life. It was not a question, but a vow. Back then, they seemed to have become a couple, kissing each other under the cheers of all their friends and family. Everyone had witnessed their beautiful promise. She thought that from that moment on, their relationship was eternal. But who knew that in the blink of an eye, only 7 or 8 years had passed, everything had changed. Tears fell down uncontrollably. It fell into the bowl and blended with the fragrant soup, making it difficult to tell which drop it belonged to. Chapter 14-13. Yi Yu's breathing became heavier and heavier. She couldn't contain the sadness in her heart. The deepest part of her heart ached uncontrollably. Layer by layer, it was so bitter that she couldn't help but cramp. Li Jinan didn't make a sound. He stood behind her and stared at her. Yi Yu quietly sobbed. She didn't cry out loud, but it made his heart ache more than if she had wailed. Her hand that was holding the chopsticks poked at her mouth from time to time. In the end, she hadn't eaten much. Li Jinan raised his hand and gently placed it on her shoulder. With his other hand, he moved the bowl in front of her away and snatched her chopsticks away. He pulled out 2 pieces of tissue and handed them to her. Yi Yu stared at the tissue in front of her in a daze. She sniffed and took it from him to wipe her nose. She composed herself and breathed a sigh of relief. In a relaxed tone, she said, GM Li, it's getting late. You'd better go back first. If the neighbors see you alone, it won't be good. Her tone was relaxed, but her nasal voice clearly betrayed her current state. Li Jinan pursed his lips into a thin line. He looked at her straight back and tightened his grip on her shoulder. He tugged at her and said, let's go. Yi Yu was stunned. She turned her head to look at the man behind her. Li Jinan's eyes were deep and dark. When she looked into them, they were as clear as the moon. They were bright and full of life. It was as if they contained limitless water and were bottomless. Let's go for a walk. Li Jinan's voice was gentle. There was no room for negotiation. I'll take you to a fun place. I don't want to go. Yi Yu sat where she was and looked at him. Her reddened eyes were slightly moist. Li Jinan's gaze deepened as he said, you skipped work this afternoon. Do you know that? Of course not. I clearly took the day off. The supervisor didn't agree. That means you skipped work. Now that I'm the boss, I have the right to ask you to work overtime. Li Jinan's voice was calm as he enunciated each word clearly. Let's go. Just treat it as work. Let's go and relax. Yi Yu was a little angry. She retorted, you're behaving like a hooligan. What kind of boss is that? Isn't the one in front of you? The corners of Li Jinan's mouth curled up slightly. If it weren't for the fact that my employees were disobedient, I wouldn't have to use such a method. Miss Yi, let's go. Where? Yi Yuyu was a little resistant. It's so late, and I'm tired. Why don't you go by yourself? No, let's go together. As he spoke, he looked at Yi Yuyu's outfit. Go change into something you can wear outside. He glanced at his watch. I'll give you 5 minutes. Otherwise, I'll deduct half a month's salary from you and inform the company. Yi Yuyu gritted her teeth and glared at him. Mira was the one who introduced her to this job. If her salary was deducted for half a month and the company reported it, Mira would lose face. This person was simply despicable. Yi Yuyu gritted her teeth and returned to her room. She changed into a more normal commuter dress. It was conservative and restrained, making her look dignified and mature. Li Jinnan nodded his head. That's commendable. Let's go. He walked toward the door. Li Jinnan opened the door and gestured to Yi Yuyu. Yi Yuyu stomped over and changed into a pair of high heels. She was surprised to find that her mood was no longer as heavy as it had been before. Chapter 14:14. She was clearly the one being bullied, but she didn't feel the slightest bit oppressed. Li Jinnan saw that she wasn't moving. He nudged her gently and said, "Let's go." Yi Yuyu felt as if she had been electrocuted. She quickly straightened her back and walked forward with her head held high. The place that Li Jinnan was referring to was a bar. The bar was different from what Yi Yuyu had imagined. It was very noisy inside, and there were many people. The lighting wasn't one of those exaggerated, colorful lights. Instead, it was a warm, romantic yellow. The music that was playing wasn't the kind that would blow up in a normal bar. Instead, it was a classic Cantonese song. The song that was playing was Beyond. The familiar melody easily stirred one's heart. A group of people inside started singing along with the rhythm. Their voices were loud and orderly. It was Yi Yuyu's first time there. Being led in by Li Jinnan was a novel experience. Hey, who's this? Isn't that our Major Li? A dark-skinned man walked over. His tight shirt accentuated his figure perfectly. He had broad shoulders, a narrow waist, a perky butt, and long legs. The lines of his face were very defined. One look and you could tell that he was a tough guy. As he spoke, he whistled and shouted in a loud voice, "Gather." Greetings, sir. Many people looked over when they heard the voice. When they saw Li Jinnan, they were obviously very surprised. Third brother. Major Li. Third brother? Li Jinnan smiled faintly. When he turned his head, he saw the surprised expression on Yi Yuyu's face. He explained, "This is a bar opened by my comrade. Most of the people here are our own people." When the man who had come up to greet her heard that, he quickly said, "Don't be fooled by the number of our own people here. There are quite a few customers, too. Many of them are regulars. Nice to meet you, lady. My name is Wu Ren. I'm third brother's comrade." Wu Ren? Mooncake? Yi Yuyu found that name a little strange. She reached out and gently placed her hand on Wu Ren's and said, "Nice to meet you. My name is Yi Yuyu." Wu Ren whistled and said, "What a beautiful name. You're the first girl that our third brother has brought over. You're so pretty. Third brother, you have good taste." Yi Yuyu was a little embarrassed. Had they misunderstood something? He looked up at Li Jinnan and realized that there was no change in his expression. In a low voice, he said, "Don't spout nonsense. She's one of my artists. She wasn't in a good mood, so I brought her here to have some fun." An artist under him? If she was really just a subordinate, why would he bring her here? Wu Ren raised his eyebrows and smiled. Who was he? He was Li Jinnan's comrade in arms and old friend, and he was also an expert in running a bar. When she heard that, she had a pretty good idea of Li Jinnan's relationship with the girl and how it had progressed. Wu Ren raised his eyebrows and gave Li Jinnan a look before turning his head around and shouting, "The event starts at 10. Get to your positions." As she said that, she turned to look at Li Jinnan and smiled frivolously. What a coincidence. It's exactly 10 o'clock. Buzz. The surrounding lights were turned off in an instant, and the sound system seemed to have been radiated, producing an ear-piercing sound. Yi Yu frowned. The next moment, a light appeared on the stage in the middle of the bar. "Good evening, everyone." A man's voice rang out. The non-standard Chinese accent made it sound a little comical. "Welcome to the Restless Night Bar. Dash." Chapter 14-15. Before Yi Yu could react to the foreigner's accent, there was a sudden commotion. With a loud bang, loud music began to play. Yi Yu was caught off guard. Her body trembled as she stared blankly in front of her. When Li Jinnan saw her reaction, his lips curled into a smile. He gave her a gentle push and said, "Let's go have some fun." Before Yi Yu could react, her body was pushed into the crowd. Many men and women were dancing together. They were twisting their hips in a provocative manner. The scene left Yi Yu speechless. This bar was indeed different from other bars. The change in style was too drastic. What a restless night. Everyone needs to get excited. Yo! The deafening music and the dancing men and women were completely different from when Yi Yu had just entered. Tonight's game is going to be interesting. I believe that everyone has heard of Truth or Dare, right? The foreigner deliberately lowered his Mandarin, which made the crowd laugh. Someone whistled from below. That's a big scale. Yo! Truth or Dare? Did Lao Wu see third brother coming over and do this on purpose? Where's third brother? Third brother. Third brother. Third brother. From the initial shout, the entire venue was soon filled with shouts. Li Jinnan was quickly surrounded. Some sharp-eyed people noticed Yi Yu beside Li Jinnan and started to make a fuss again. Is the 10,000-year-old iron tree blooming? This must be third sister-in-law, right? No wonder third brother hasn't been coming out to play recently. Hello, third sister-in-law. Hello, third sister-in-law. The crowd's voices grew louder and louder. Yi Yu was a little numb from all the shouting. When she heard them call her third sister-in-law, she felt even more embarrassed. Just as she was about to wave her hand to explain, Li Jinnan reached for a microphone and said, "Don't spout nonsense. She's in a bad mood, so I brought her out to relax. Don't bully her. Our relationship isn't what you think it is." Oh. The crowd began to make a fuss. Our relationship isn't what we think it is? Are you already married? Third brother, you're so mean. Humph, to think that I washed your socks when I was in the army. You're really something. Li Jinnan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "Aren't you guys annoying?" I already said it wasn't. TSK, Yi Yu felt even more embarrassed. She looked at Li Jinnan and felt a little awkward. Alright, let's get back to business. Since you're here, you won't be in a bad mood. Come, let's get excited. The scene was fiery hot, the music was restless, and the atmosphere was lively. A girl walked over and tugged Yi Yu along. Come on, let's play together. Do you like to sing? Let's go sing together. Why are you singing? I can tell that she's a dancer just by looking at her good figure. Come, come, come. Let's do it together. At first, Yi Yu was a little resistant. When she turned her head, she saw that the clothes on the two girls were very normal. They weren't like the girls in the bar who were dressed very skimpily. He turned his head and looked around again. He found that there were many girls here, and they were all dressed very normally. Chapter 14-16. From the way they addressed him as third brother, it was obvious that they respected Li Jinnan a lot. Yi Yuyu instinctively looked in Li Jinnan's direction and realized that he was already surrounded by a few other men. He seemed to be smiling, and his eyes were clear and gentle. The girl noticed her gaze and smiled knowingly. She quietly asked, "What's your relationship with third brother?" "This is the first time third brother has brought a girl over." "Are you his girlfriend?" Yi Yuyu shook her head. "No, he's my boss." "Oh." The girl looked like she understood and asked, "Are you here on a business trip together?" "No, so, you're here to play together?" Another girl interrupted. She looked at Yi Yuyu with a smile in her eyes. Yi Yuyu shook her head again. This time, before she could explain herself, she was pushed by someone who said, "Don't be so nosy. Third brother won't be happy when he finds out. If you're here to play, you have to be quick. Come on, girl. Get up." Yi Yuyu had always been an obedient girl. When she was pushed, she felt a little resistant. However, the girls present were very lively and cheerful. They were also very humorous. Gradually, Yi Yuyu let go and started dancing with them. When Li Jinnan saw the smile on Yi Yuyu's face from afar, he finally relaxed. The comrade beside him noticed Li Jinnan's gaze. He chuckled and said, "Have you taken a liking to her? She's not bad looking. She has a good demeanor. She looks very obedient. So, third brother likes this type of girl." Li Jinnan chuckled. He didn't admit or deny it. His weak-colored hand held the crystal glass and gently swirled the whiskey in it. He slowly looked away. They were all comrades who had fought alongside Li Jinnan on the battlefield. How well did they know him? When they saw their attitude, they knew what he was thinking. He chuckled and said, "Third brother, it's been a long time since you've been here. We've recently invented a few new games. Let's play together." Li Jinnan saw through his ploy with one look. He sneered and said, "Truth or dare isn't suitable for me." Regardless of whether it was the exciting truth or the boring dare, he had no interest in trying them out. "Don't be like that. We're all brothers. It's for your own good. You'll know later." With that, without waiting for Li Jinnan's approval, he clapped his hands and said, "Truth or dare? Everyone, take a break. Let's do something more exciting. Guys, let's go." The crowd cheered, and soon, someone took out a few balloons. Wuren extinguished the cigarette in his hand and said, "Come, third brother, let me tell you the rules. Pass the ball to your chest. The balloon can't burst or fall, or you lose." "What happens if you lose?" someone asked. The surrounding people cheered and shouted, "That's simple. Let's drink. 1 cup for the men, half a cup for the women. Come on, let's get moving." Wuren clapped his hands and shouted, "Wife, come here." The girl who was playing with Yi Yuyu replied, "Coming." Yi Yuyu was a little surprised that they were husband and wife. Before she could recover from her shock, she was pulled over by him. Wuren opened a bottle of whiskey and said, "Come on, let's drink." Whiskey was a type of alcohol with a high alcohol content. The penalty for the game was to drink it? Yi Yuyu wasn't the only one who was scared. Even Li Jinnan frowned and said, "So much? There are so many girls." Wu Ren's eyes turned into crescents as he looked at Li Jinnan. "Wan Lily, if big sister doesn't get drunk, big brother won't stand a chance." Chapter 14-17. What are you afraid of? As long as you don't make any mistakes, you don't have to drink. Besides, it's a cup for a man and half a cup for a woman. It's not much. Wu Ren's eyes curved into crescents as he hugged his wife and said, "I'm not bragging, but my wife can drink half a bottle by herself." The surrounding people booed, obviously not believing it. Li Jinnan didn't believe it either and asked, "How is that possible?" "Io, you'll know once you try. Come, let's begin." Yi Yuyu had been dragged over as well. She had been having a good time with the other girls. When she saw the game, she was eager to try it out. But when he thought of drinking such strong alcohol, he was a little scared. A girl nudged Yi Yu and asked, "Can you drink?" Yi Yu thought about it and replied, "It should be possible. She used to drink a lot in the past, so her alcohol tolerance wasn't bad. But it had been a long time. She didn't know if her alcohol tolerance had decreased." Amidst the whispers, some fast-paced people had already started. There were dozens of people in the hall, and they were divided into 3 groups of 15 people, including the host. Li Jinnan's comrades, who were on good terms with him, brought their wives with them to join Li Jinnan and Yi Yu's team. Yi Yu didn't know anyone else, so she naturally stood beside Li Jinnan. The other person beside Yi Yu was Wu Ren's wife. The lights in the hall became dimmer and more dazzling. The cheerful and exciting music raised the atmosphere layer by layer. The balloon quickly passed through several people. Everyone was very careful, afraid that the balloon would fall. When Yi Yu took it from him, she was just as careful. She called out, "GM Li, come quickly." She carefully rubbed against the chest of the girl in front of her and gently tucked her chin between her legs. When she turned around, her face quickly came into contact with Li Jinnan's chest. Yi Yu's eyes were glued to the balloon in front of her. When she noticed that Li Jinnan had taken it from her, she heaved a sigh of relief. However, when he looked up, he was met with a pair of pitch-black and bright eyes. The colorful lights in the surroundings shone on his eyes, making them look even more dazzling and resplendent. Yi Yu's heart skipped a beat. Her eyes were filled with amazement. Li Jinnan's gaze seemed to linger on it for a moment. Very quickly, he picked up the balloon and turned around to hand it to Wu Ren. After a round, he was safe and sound. At the start of the second round, a man failed. The balloon was squeezed too hard, and it exploded on the neck. The girl next to her was startled and exclaimed. That guy shrugged helplessly. "Sigh, there's nothing I can do. With a beauty by my side, my heart starts pounding." Hearing this, the surrounding people couldn't help but laugh. The man drank a glass of whiskey, his face relaxed and unharmed. On the 4th lap, someone made another mistake. When the balloon was passed to Yi Yu, Wu Ren's wife released it before Yi Yu could clamp it shut. Yi Yu cried out in surprise and instinctively used both hands to hold it. But as soon as his hand caught the balloon, someone immediately said, "Hey, you can't do this. Foul, foul. Drink, drink." Yi Yu blushed. She hadn't expected herself to be the second one to make a mistake. When he saw Wu Ren handing him the wine cup, he accepted his fate and drank it. Chapter 14:18. When Li Jinnan's balloon fell, the reaction was louder than any of the others who had fallen. Everyone seemed to be on steroids. They clapped their hands and exclaimed, "Third brother has dropped it. Bah! Third brother's balloon has dropped. Let's drink, let's drink. Wahahaha. We finally have a chance to get him drunk. We've always been the ones drinking in the past. Come on, let's drink." Li Jinnan took the glass and looked at them. His lips curled into a contemptuous smile. He tilted his head back and downed the glass in one gulp. His expression pissed everyone off. "Hey, what's the meaning of this? So, you're still not convinced, third brother? Brothers, let's take turns with him tonight. I don't believe that we can't get this guy drunk." Almost everyone rolled up their sleeves and looked at Li Jinnan provocatively. Li Jinnan's expression was indifferent. When he heard that, he laughed contemptuously and said, "Let's try." His arrogant attitude infuriated the crowd who had never been taken advantage of by him. They looked at each other maliciously. Yi Yu smiled. Yi Yu broke into a smile. It seemed like GM Li was very impressive. After another round, there were more and more people who made mistakes. Everyone was hoping that Li Jinnan would make another mistake. Unexpectedly, Li Jinnan seemed to have turned on a cheat code. Since they couldn't mess with Li Jinnan, everyone began to feel a little bored. Just as they were about to say that they were done with it, Yi Yu made another mistake. Yi Yu had drunk half a glass of hard liquor. Her cheeks were starting to turn red. She made another mistake. Her face was scrunched up. Resigned to her fate, she finished the remaining half of the glass. Her head felt a little dizzy. She passed the balloon behind her, but before Li Jinnan could take it, her line of sight was blocked by a warm palm. The rough, calloused hand landed on her forehead. She felt a cooling sensation that made Yi Yu feel comfortable. Yi Yu looked up and blinked. "Are you drunk?" Li Jinnan's deep, magnetic voice sounded out. It had an indescribable charm to it. Like an endless vine, it quickly wrapped around her. Yi Yu was stunned. She loosened her grip, and the balloon fell back down. I dropped it." "Drink, drink." Everyone jeered. The alcohol in Yi Yu's body seemed to evaporate even faster. Her body was boiling hot. She slapped his hand away unhappily and said, "It's all your fault." "I dropped it again." Li Jinnan's deep, dark eyes seemed to flash with a hint of a smile, but it was gone in a flash. He said, "Your tolerance for alcohol is so poor. Why don't you stop playing? This won't do." "It's already started, how can she not play? Besides, she just went on a business trip and hasn't had a drink yet. Hurry up and drink." Yi Yu picked up the wine glass reluctantly, but it was pressed down by a warm, large hand. "It's my fault. I'll drink it." He put down the glass in her hand and picked up his own. "Sure, but you're a man, so you have to drink." "That's right, men need to drink." When Li Jinnan heard that, he downed his glass of wine without another word. Yi Yu looked at Li Jinnan with her eyes wide open. She blinked, and her mind began to drift. She picked up the balloon and handed it over. Her eyes were glazed over. Chapter 14:19. Indeed, for the rest of the round, there were frequent mistakes. When it was Yi Yu's turn, she was no longer as energetic as before. She dropped the ball in an instant. Just as she was about to resign herself to her fate, the glass was pressed back down. Li Jinnan drained his glass in one gulp. The crowd erupted in cheers. For the next 4 or 5 rounds, Yi Yu was in a daze. She either couldn't catch the ball or couldn't hold it properly. Without exception, Li Jinnan finished the glass before she could make a move. After downing the last glass, Yi Yu was a little alarmed. She said, "Why don't we stop playing? GM Li, you've drunk too much." Wu Ren felt that he had gone too far. He gave his wife a look. Wu Ren's wife saw his look and immediately said, "How can we do that? I haven't had my fill yet. Come on, let's continue." Wu Ren held his forehead in exasperation. When Wu Ren's wife saw that, she knew that she had misunderstood. But the words had already been spoken. There was no way she could take them back. She had no choice but to bite the bullet and say, "It's fine if we stop playing. You can punish yourself with a glass." After all, third brother can drink. The moment she said that, Li Jinnan downed another glass without another word. He grabbed Yi Yu's arm and said, "Let's go. You guys play by yourselves." Wow. Third brother is so cool. Third brother, be careful of the after effects. Unfortunately, third brother had already walked far away. Yi Yu was a little afraid. The after effects of the liquor were very strong. Li Jinnan had drunk them one after another. He would probably suffer later. When they walked out of the bar, the ground outside was dripping wet. The rain had stopped a long time ago. It was getting late, and there weren't many taxis on the road. Both of them had been drinking. Neither of them had thought of getting their cars. Li Jinnan stood under the traffic light. When the cold wind hit him, he felt a little dizzy. He closed his eyes. His face was burning. He forced himself to calm down and said, "I'll take you back first." I'll go back to the hotel. Yi Yu found it a little strange. She looked at him suspiciously and asked, are you up to it? Li Jinnan squinted his eyes. His lips seemed to be curled into a smile, but it was hard to tell. He turned his head and looked at Yi Yu with an indescribable expression as he said, a man can't do that. Yi Yu froze when she heard that. Her face heated up even more. She turned her head away without another word. You still have so much energy after drinking so much wine. Looks like you can do it. It seemed like she had worried for nothing. After standing in the wind for a few minutes, a taxi finally arrived. He sat in the front seat while Yi Yu sat in the back seat to cool off her alcohol. She only drank 1 cup and felt a little dizzy, so she wasn't really drunk. He leaned against the back seat and closed his eyes to rest. Soon, they arrived. Yi Yu opened the car door and got out. She called out to Li Jinnan and said, GM Li, I'm leaving. Yi Yu didn't care. She turned around and was about to leave when the taxi driver stopped her. He shouted, Miss, GM Li is drunk. Why are you leaving? Where is he going? Who's going to pay? Yi Yu stopped in her tracks and turned her head to look. Li Jinnan leaned against the car seat with his eyes closed. His face was flushed, and his breathing was even and reeked of alcohol. The driver's voice was a little loud, but it didn't wake Li Jinnan up. Yi Yu frowned. Her head was throbbing with pain. Indeed. My worries have come true. What should I do now? I can't possibly bring him home to sleep, can I? Dash. Chapter 14:20. Why are you just standing there? What should we do? Miss, you have to get him out of here. The taxi driver saw that Yi Yu wasn't moving and began to panic. Yi Yu sighed. She had no choice but to open the back seat door again. She got in and said, let's go to a hotel nearby. I'll settle him down. The driver obeyed and quickly set off. Do you want to go to a good or normal hotel? Yi Yu thought for a moment and replied, a 5-star hotel. There's one nearby. All right. The driver quickly took them to their destination. Li Jinnan was in a deep sleep. Yi Yu unbuckled his seatbelt and gently called out, GM Li, it's time to wake up. I'll take you to rest. But there was no response. Li Jinnan was 1.9 meters tall and had a strong physique. Just looking at his body made Yi Yu feel heavy. When she saw the situation, she began to worry. She looked to the driver for help and said, Big brother, can you help me get him out? I can't move him alone. The driver had expected that and didn't refuse. He immediately unbuckled his seatbelt and got out of the car. When he got Li Jinnan out, it was a little strenuous for the driver. Suddenly, Li Jinnan seemed to sense something and opened his eyes. That pair of hazy, intoxicated eyes seemed to be quenched with a cold light, extremely sharp. The sudden opening of his eyes gave the driver a fright. He mumbled, You're awake? Li Jinnan groaned in discomfort. He stood up on his own and called out, Yu. Yi Yu was shocked and immediately replied, Yes. After she replied, she realized that this was the first time that Li Jinnan hadn't called her by her full name. My head hurts. Li Jinnan's voice was a little groggy. It sounded like he was talking in his sleep. But, at least, he was awake. Yi Yu finally breathed a sigh of relief. She supported him and asked, Can you walk? Come, I'll take you to the hotel. Okay. Li Jinnan leaned on her. His steps were a little unsteady. That bunch of rascals couldn't wait to drink me to death. Ouch! It was still difficult for Li Jinnan to stand on his own. His entire weight was on Yi Yu. Yi Yu thanked the driver and helped him into the hotel. The receptionist welcomed them with a smile and said, Hello miss, how many rooms do you need? Yi Yu gestured with her finger and said, A single room. Okay, please show me your identification. Yi Yuyu supported him and asked, "Where did you put your ID?" Li Jinnan was in a trance. He seemed to have heard her speak, but it also seemed like he was hallucinating. When Yi Yuyu saw that he didn't respond, she supported him with one hand and reached for his pocket with the other. He felt in his jacket pocket. Nothing. She had no choice but to reach into his pants pocket, press it to confirm the location, and then put her hand in. Before she could touch the leather armor, Li Jinnan stopped her with one hand. "Don't touch me. It's uncomfortable." Li Jinnan's tone was a little annoyed. He sounded like he was complaining, which was very different from his usual self. She felt a little dizzy, but at least she was still conscious. She said, "Let go. I'm taking your ID. I need it to get a room." "Oh." Li Jinnan released his hand, but then he realized that he had been taken to a hotel by a woman. Making up his mind, Zhang Xian turned around to take a look. Chapter 14:21. After calming down, Li Jinnan relaxed and leaned on Yi Yuyu's shoulder. His eyes were half closed. Yi Yuyu didn't notice the change in Li Jinnan's gaze. She took out his leather armor and took out his identification card. She searched through his wallet. Cards. Many, many cards. The entire wallet was almost filled with cards. There were also a few very high-class business cards. As for cash, Yi Yuyu looked through it. There were only a few. "Miss, you also need to show me your identification card." The receptionist smiled politely. "I'll send him up now. I'll come down later." "Do you want it too?" Yi Yuyu didn't want to take it out. She felt weird getting a room with a man. It made her feel uneasy, especially when she had to leave her identification card information. The receptionist was very polite, but she nodded her head firmly and said, "Yes, it is. Registration is required to visit and check in. Please show it to me." Yi Yuyu was a little hesitant, but she still took out her identification card. After registering, Yi Yuyu swiped her card and helped Li Jinnan to find a room. Fortunately, the room was easy to find. It wasn't far after they got off the elevator. She opened the door. Li Jinnan's eyes widened. He staggered and closed the door behind him. He allowed himself to be helped to the bed. His steps were unsteady. When he reached the bed, his foot hit the edge of the bed, and he fell over. Li Jinnan's fall caused Yi Yuyu to lose her balance as well, and she tumbled downward. With that, she fell onto Li Jinnan's body. With the soft beauty in his arms, Li Jinnan didn't know if he was in pain or in pleasure. He hugged her with one hand and opened his eyes. Yi Yuyu was shocked. She instinctively wanted to get up, but she was firmly held down. Li Jinnan's eyes were hazy and slightly red. His gaze was dark and misty. Yi Yuyu was stunned for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. She struggled for a moment and said, "GM Li, I'm going back." Li Jinnan didn't move. He looked at her as if he hadn't reacted. Other than Shenluo, and this was the first time Yi Yuyu had been so close to a man. She felt the hot body in front of her. His strong and powerful heartbeat was stable through his clothes. She could feel every beat clearly. Li Jinnan smelled of alcohol and tobacco. This was a smell that Shenluo didn't have. Yi Yuyu found that his eyelids were closing more and more. She didn't move. When his eyelids were completely closed, she would leave quietly. After a few minutes, Yi Yuyu couldn't stand it anymore. She gently lifted his hand, but when she did so, she found that she couldn't move it at all. It was as if Li Jinnan's arm had grown out of her body. No matter how hard she tried, it wouldn't budge. Yi Yuyu had drunk a lot of alcohol. Although it wasn't much, she still felt a little dizzy. Frustrated, she couldn't bear it any longer. She propped herself up and said, "GM Li, I want to go home. Let go of me." Jinnan, Li Jinnan, and Jinnan, and Li. And Li Jinan wrapped an arm around Yi Yuyu's waist and flipped them over. In an instant, they were in a different position. Chapter 14:22. His hot breath landed on Yi Yuyu's neck, bringing with it a strange numbness. Yi Yuyu's heart raced. The unfamiliar temperature and the unfamiliar sensation made Yi Yuyu feel as if blood was rushing to the top of her head. Li Jinan's gaze deepened. He could clearly feel the warm and fragrant body beneath him. His already racing heart seemed to have been stimulated, and it began to pound. His breath, which reeked of alcohol, hit Yi Yuyu. Her face began to burn, and her head began to spin. She was so dizzy that she almost fell asleep. After the flight, the incident at the hospital, the game, and the hard liquor that she had drunk, Yi Yuyu was beyond exhausted. But she couldn't sleep. At least, she couldn't sleep there. She tried to push him away, but he wouldn't budge. Li Jinan lowered his body slightly, and the ambiguous atmosphere suddenly became unbridled. It was as if he had been possessed. Almost instinctively, Yi Yuyu reached out and placed her hands on his chest. She said, "GM Li, don't move." Li Jinnan's voice was a little hoarse, and the strong smell of alcohol accompanied his words. As he spoke, Li Jinnan shifted his body to the side and shifted his center of gravity. Yi Yuyu was a little uncomfortable under his weight. With that shift, she finally heaved a sigh of relief. Before she had a chance to get up, Li Jinnan pressed her down and pressed his rosy lips against hers. The warm and soft touch made Yi Yuyu's eyes widen. She immediately turned her head to the side, but Li Jinnan held her firmly in place. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't move an inch. Li Jinnan pried her hands open and intertwined his fingers with hers. His hot body pressed against hers. Through the thin fabric, they could clearly feel each other's body heat. Yi Yuyu resisted. She tried to push him away, but she couldn't do anything about his strength. Perhaps it was because of the alcohol, but Li Jinnan's behavior was a lot more frivolous than usual. His knee pushed up slightly and pressed down on her flailing legs. His kiss was unaffected. It became more intense and forceful. Yi Yuyu's head was spinning. Strange sensations were rising in her body. They were foreign to the extreme. This sort of feeling was as if someone was holding a feather and lightly stroking it on her tailbone. It caused her to feel unbearably itchy, and her heart surged with excitement. A soft moan escaped her throat. Yi Yuyu's breathing became more rapid. Her mind was buzzing, and her movements had subconsciously slowed down. Li Jinnan had drunk a lot of alcohol. He wasn't very sober, but he knew very well who the person in front of him was and what he was doing. He had never been a person who was willing to force himself. At this moment, he was completely relying on his subconscious. Oh. Yi Yuyu felt as if she had been splashed with a pail of cold water. Her consciousness cleared in an instant. She struggled and shook her head with great difficulty. Li Jinnan paused for a moment, and his hand moved away to wrap around her waist. With great difficulty, Yi Yuyu moved her lips away. She raised her head and began to pant. "GM Li, please let go. I'm a married woman. I have a husband." Chapter 14:23. This wasn't the first time Li Jinnan had said that. But, every time he said it, Yi Yuyu found it hard to believe. How could such a person exist? How could he ask a married woman to divorce him? Even though she had only had a messy night with him after she had gotten married. A grown man shouldn't be at a disadvantage. Furthermore, this man was so outstanding. Why did he have to be with a married woman? Yi Yuyu couldn't figure it out. She looked into his dark eyes and pursed her lips as she said, "GM Li, you're drunk." Li Jinnan's gaze deepened. He lowered his head and embraced her. His red lips pressed against hers. There was no deliberate technique. Li Jinnan was relying entirely on his instincts to control his actions. Yi Yuyu's breathing grew heavier. She resisted. Her rational mind told her that she couldn't have any sort of relationship with this man. But at the same time, there was an unfamiliar comfortable feeling that swept over him layer by layer. Her misty eyes opened a slit. As she gazed at the man in front of her, Yi Yuyu felt touched. It had been a long time since she last saw him. Although Li Jinnan's actions were large, they were gentle and gentle. It was as if he was carefully wiping a beautiful piece of jade. It gave Yi Yuyu the illusion that she was being loved and cherished. She had to admit that it was much more comfortable than Shen Luo'an's attitude toward her. Li Jinnan's hand slid down, and the zipper on Yi Yuyu's side was unzipped. Undressing a woman seemed to be a natural gift for every man. When Li Jinnan's hand reached inside and touched her soft and warm body, his heart was in turmoil. It was surging and stirring. Yi Yuyu tilted her head back and narrowed her eyes. The comfort that came from her body made her dizzy. She couldn't help but be mesmerized by this mistake. So be it, she no longer had the strength to defend herself for Shen Luo'an. Li Jinnan sensed the change in her. She had gone from resisting to submissive. To a man, this was a trophy of victory. When they entered, both of their bodies trembled visibly. Yi Yuyu grabbed Li Jinnan's arm with both hands and moaned, "It hurts." Li Jinnan's back stiffened. After a while, he slowly got into the zone. It wasn't the first time for either of them, but it was equally maddening. It was late at night. But for some people, it was just the beginning. When Yi Yuyu woke up, her entire body was in pain. His arm was numb. She turned her head and found that her arms were pressed under the man's body, and her legs were directly placed on his body. The sky was bright, and both of them were naked. Yi Yuyu could clearly see the scars on his body. The long knife and gunshot wounds were especially eye-catching on his wheat-colored skin. The scene reminded Yi Yuyu that Li Jinnan used to be a soldier. There was a fresh wound on his arm. It was a cut. There was no doubt that she had done it. Yi Yuyu held her breath nervously. With a gentle movement, she put her foot down. Just as she was about to retract her hand, the eyes of the man in front of her slowly opened. Yi Yuyu was taken aback. She froze in her tracks. Li Jinnan looked at her, and his gaze trailed down. Yi Yuyu's chest, collarbone, and neck were all covered in purple marks. They were especially eye-catching on her fair skin. This was a little tragic. He quickly averted his gaze and looked at Yi Yuyu's face as he greeted, "Good morning." Dash. Chapter 1424. Yi Yuyu's face suddenly heated up. She immediately retracted her hand and covered her chest. She flipped over and pulled the blanket over her body. Her heart was beating rapidly. The redness spread from her face to the tips of her ears. Yi Yuyu didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. She looked up at the ceiling and said, "Last night, we were both drunk." Li Jinnan was in a good mood when he saw her reaction. His lips curled into a smile. He quickly flipped over and sat up. "Yeah." His voice was low and slightly hoarse. Li Jinnan picked up his pants from the floor and took out his pack of cigarettes. He slowly took out a cigarette and lit it up. He turned his head and saw Yi Yuyu's flushed face. He raised his eyebrows and took a puff of the cigarette. He asked, So, this is considered a drunken promiscuity." Yi Yuyu hugged the blanket and turned her body slightly so that Li Jinnan couldn't see her face. "So, I don't mind. Don't need to take responsibility." Li Jinnan chuckled. He leaned over and exhaled a puff of white smoke. In a gentle voice, he said, "No." The white smoke flew past her, and the faint smell of tobacco brushed past her nose. When she heard Li Jinnan's words, Yi Yuyu's body stiffened. She didn't know how to react. She asked, "What?" "It's not a drunken promiscuity." Li Jinnan's voice was a little hoarse. It was charming and magnetic as he whispered into her ear, "I slept with you on purpose." Whoosh! Yi Yuyu's mind went blank as if it had been struck by lightning. Li Jinnan saw that her ear had turned even redder. He couldn't help but smile. He leaned forward and reached out to gently place his hand on her shoulder. He continued, "Besides, I also wanted to." Before Li Jinnan could finish his sentence, Yi Yuyu's body suddenly trembled. She screamed, "Don't even think about it." At the same time, she suddenly turned around and rolled to the side with the blanket wrapped around her. With that roll, Yi Yuyu fell to the floor with the blanket still wrapped around her. Yi Yuyu was caught off guard. She cried out in surprise as she sprawled on the carpet. Her face was as red as blood. The two of them were using the same blanket. Yi Yuyu had rolled the blanket to the floor, so Li Jinnan's body was naturally exposed. Yi Yuyu instinctively turned her head to look. She was immediately greeted by the sight of a sexy figure. Blood rushed to her head. She quickly turned around. Her heart was beating like thunder, and her breathing was ragged. She shut her eyes tightly. She was so embarrassed that she couldn't speak. He put out his cigarette and said, "Get up. I'm not going to look at you." The moment he said that, Yi Yuyu heard the rustling of clothes coming from behind her. Following that, she heard Li Jinnan walk toward the bathroom. The sound of running water could be heard. She let out a sigh of relief. She wrapped herself in the blanket and stood up. She turned her head to look at the mirrored wall at the head of the bed. At a glance, she saw that her face was so red that it was almost bloodshot. She got up to put on her clothes. It was only then that she realized that her body was sticky and uncomfortable. She put on her clothes and went to the sink to look at herself in the mirror. Her neck and collarbone were covered in bruises. It was as if she had been abused. Just then, Li Jinnan came out of the bathroom. His eyes seemed to wander to her neck. Chapter 1425. Her heart was beating faster than it had ever been. The mirror in the bathroom was clearer than the one outside, and it made her bright red face stand out. What was worse was that, in addition to her red face, the marks on her neck made Yi Yuyu feel as if she had been a thief. Does this count as adultery? No. I'm adultery. Yi Yuyu felt like she was about to collapse at the thought. She looked at herself in the mirror as if she were looking at a stranger. How did this happen? She wasn't like this in the past. Yi Yuyu had never imagined that she would have an affair, and with Li Jinnan no less. The previous night, no one had been sober. This time, Li Jinnan was drunk, and she was sober. How could she be so muddle-headed? This is crazy. Yi Yuyu scratched her head in frustration. She turned on the tap and slapped her face hard. The temperature on her face finally cooled. Yi Yuyu took off the clothes she had just put on and used the hot water to rub on the marks on her body. She wasn't sure if it was an illusion, but the bruises seemed to be fading away. After taking a comfortable shower, she walked out. She had thought that Li Jinnan would have left a long time ago. Unexpectedly, the moment she walked out, she saw Li Jinnan standing by the window with both hands on the railing. He held a cigarette in his right hand. He seemed to have heard the commotion and turned around to look at Yi Yuyu. Yi Yuyu's hair was wet. She was surprised to see him. He put out the cigarette and said, "Dry your hair, and then we'll go for breakfast." Yi Yuyu was a little stunned. When she heard that, she couldn't help but blush. She turned around and said, "You don't have to wait for me. You go ahead first. I still have a long time." "How long?" Li Jinnan asked casually. He knew what she was up to. "It's just drying your hair. Do you need help?" Yi Yuyu's back stiffened. She immediately shook her head. "No." The hairdryer was designed to be attached to the wall next to the sink. Yi Yuyu stood in front of the mirror and dried her hair. When she remembered that Li Jinnan was behind her, she felt a little uncomfortable. Li Jinnan was typing on his phone. When he noticed her stiffness, he walked away and sat on the edge of the bed. After she was done drying her hair, she tidied herself up and slowly picked up her handbag. After confirming that she was done, Li Jinan looked at the time and muttered to himself, "It's really troublesome for a woman to go out." An hour had passed, and Yi Yu was obviously barefaced. She hadn't put on any makeup. Including the time needed to put on makeup, wouldn't it take 2 hours? When Yi Yu heard what he said, she felt an inexplicable sense of schadenfreude. She replied, "I already told you not to wait for me." Li Jinan glanced at her from the corner of his eyes before averting his gaze. He placed his hand on her shoulder and said, "I'm willing." Yi Yu felt a weight on her shoulders, and her face turned even redder. She resisted the intimacy. As she tried to push his hand away, she said, "GM Li, it's not good for others to see this." "Who are the others?" Li Jinan tilted his head and looked over. His eyes were deep and dark. Shenluo-en. Shenluo-en, those 3 words were like a heavy hammer that smashed into Yi Yu's most sensitive nerve. You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.